Good morning. I'd like to call to order the Commonwealth Transportation Board's workshop meeting. Appreciate everybody being here today. Our first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll please rise. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, folks. Sometimes when I say that, I just sort of say it, because we've been saying it since I was a little kid. But sometimes I really think about the words when I say it. And I was doing that this morning, because a lot of people don't have that great opportunity that we have here. And we remember that every day, that we're blessed. So thank you for joining me within that. We've got a full agenda today, I think, lots of good stuff to do. And I'm excited to be here. The first item on our agenda is the capital budget and the disposition of some railroad property for the VPRA. Our esteemed Mr. DJ Statler, Executive Director of VPRA, is here with us this morning. Sir, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Great to see you.
It's great to be seen. I appreciate it.
Hope you're doing well.
I am. Thank you, sir, for asking. I appreciate your concern. Good morning, Mr. Secretary. Good morning, members of the board. My name is DJ Statler. I'm the Executive Director of the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, and I'm here today to present our FY26 capital budget. As you may recall, we sent the budget to you all back in February. And this may be the, oh, there we go, okay. We sent the budget to you back in February, and normally what we do is we come at the February meeting to workshop it and walk you through it, and then we'll come back in the March meeting to get approval. This year, we changed that process slightly. We have a number of high-dollar projects that are in the procurement process, and right now we're in negotiations, so some of the numbers are going to change when those negotiations are done. However, legislation says that you all have to make an opinion on this budget by the end of May, so we just wanted to give an update on where those negotiations are and give you an update on the budget. Also, as part of the Manassas transaction that we briefed you all on last year, we've worked with FRA. We have worked with FRA, but also with VRE, and they have made a contribution to our Manassas line purchase. As a result of that contribution, we are contemplating to transfer ownership of some pieces of the Manassas line to them. We're going to talk about that today as well, because if we dispose of any railroad asset over $5 million, we need this board's approval. And then the final piece is just to give you a timeline on what comes next with the negotiations and when we'll come back with an amended budget. So if you look at our budget, we have really nothing but good news, knock on wood. This is the same chart that you all saw last year. The major difference you will see this year from last year is that second column from the left is estimate level. What we do every year is we provide our estimate level, whether it's a rough order magnitude, conceptual design, 30%, 60%, et cetera. As we've talked about many, many times, if you are not at least at 30%, your estimates really aren't that good. I'm thrilled to say that if you look at this table, we've got things in final design, we've got things about to go into construction. By the end of this year, we've got at least 3 major projects that will be in construction, shovels on the ground, and that gives us great certainty around these numbers. These are the projects that we've been talking about since 2020, 2021, and it's great to finally, knock on wood, see them go from the design phase to construction. Next slide. The first major project we're going to talk about is the Long Bridge. So the Long Bridge, as you may recall, is a $2.3 billion project. When we put it out for procurement, we split it into 2 separate projects. The North Project, which goes from the north end of the Potomac into DC to almost LaFont Plaza. That's the more difficult of the 2 projects. The second project is the South piece, which is the bridge over the river that includes a pedestrian bike bridge. North Project, we signed a contract with Skanska Flatiron. They won the competitive bid back in 2023. Our board, the VPRA board, allowed that to go forward. This is a progressive design build, and we're currently in negotiations with Skanska Flatiron. I'm happy to say those negotiations are going well. The joint venture is committed to moving forward quickly to get this project done. It's going to be done in 2030. You see some of the risks, some of the things we're talking about right now in negotiations. The bottom line is we're confident that we will come to an agreed upon price in the May-June timeframe. So assuming that continues to go well, which we're confident it will, we'll be back here in the summer to update you on how those negotiations went. Let me caveat this. So there are three projects we'll talk about: Longbridge North, Longbridge South, and the Franconia-Springfield bypass. Some of them are coming in higher than we expected. Some are coming in lower than we expected, knock on wood. We are confident that through these negotiations, we will be able to fund all three projects within our current funding level. So we don't envision a situation where we'll be back here in June or July saying, please, Mr. Secretary, we need more money, if only because he'll say no. So that's Longbridge North. Any questions on Longbridge North?
We all know that Mr. Statler is a very smart man.
I respond well to feedback. Longbridge South is the second one. This is a project that is a straight design build. This was won by Trumbull, Fay, and Wagman as a JV called Longbridge Partners. This is the bridge that actually goes over the water. This is currently a 30% design. We have awarded a notice to proceed in January, where they're starting to do the scope validation to ensure that everything they thought was there is there. There's some work being done, some pile driving and some soil testing to ensure that there will be no surprises, because as we always say here, no surprises. We envision that by the end of the summer, by August, we will have a guaranteed maximum price. We'll have a solid price based on the scope validation and be able to start construction in the August timeframe. Again, no surprises. We feel in pretty good shape on that. Any questions on Longbridge South?
Mr. Secretary,
Dr. Smoot,
the funding package for this entire project is still intact?
Yes, sir.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, for the whole Transformer Rail in Virginia is still intact. And the last one we'll talk about today that's currently in negotiations is the Franconia-Springfield bypass. This is the one just south of Springfield that keeps the passenger trains on dedicated tracks so we don't have to mix with freight. This was won by a Flatiron Herzog joint venture, and we are in final negotiations with them now. They're actually going to start construction in the June timeframe. They're going to create a shoe fly, which is kind of like a temporary lane to let the the trains go around the actual railroad so we can do work without fouling the track. Very innovative solution that they've come up with, and repeating myself, midsummer, we'll have a final price that we'll bring back to you all as part of an amended budget. Any questions on those three major projects? Okay, the fun one. This is the one we briefed you, the Western Rail Corridor. This is the original plan for us to get to Christiansburg, was to go on the Virginian line. The more work we did on that, we found that it was going to be much more expensive. We thought it was going to be about $250 million, and it turned out to be about $1 billion. We said that's a bad idea. Our board said that's a bad idea. Not surprisingly, you all said it's a bad idea. Came up with a new solution we briefed you all on last year. I'm happy to say that that solution is moving forward quickly. It allows us to get to the New River Valley faster and much cheaper. As part of that deal, we're purchasing the Manassas line. Here's the table, the summary. The only change here is the Cambria platform went up about $6 million. There were more significant drainage issues in the parking lot than we expected, and that, by agreement, is all our responsibility and not Norfolk Southern. So we had to find another $6 million, which thankfully the revenues were up. Thank you, Commissioner Britch. So we were able to find that. But other than that change, this is pretty much status quo. We are going to, if you look at this here, we're going to be putting the new platform in place. This is an overhead picture of the site at Cambria. Norfolk Southern has moved out of the old historic station building to a new maintenance building to the east there that they have almost finished construction. I guess they finished construction, but they haven't quite moved in. We'll put a new platform in there. We'll have a connecting track. This will be the stop in New River Valley, and then if you go further west about 9.5 miles, there'll also be a layover facility in Radford. They have not yet broken ground on this, but they will on April 24th when the governor is available, thankfully. And that is going to be, I think you've all been invited to that. I would hope to see you all there.
Statler,
Yes,
let me make a couple comments.
please.
You know, when we've been through this before, but I think it bears repeating. When we became aware of the magnitude of the discrepancies in this project in terms of cost versus what it was suggested to be, it was obviously a real kick in the gut, because it just didn't make a lot of sense at that point. And the lessons that we've learned over and over and over again, and I hope that we never forget, this is from my successors, is never announce something until you have enough information. Never announce a number till you have enough information to have confidence in the number. And if you recall, I think, it's not a criticism here, it's just a fact, that when it was announced, there was 0% design, 0% engineering. And big projects don't work that way. You know, something really simple, maybe, but the complexities of the design and engineering and environmental are huge. And so when we found ourselves in this situation, DJ and the team got together, and we all worked with Norfolk Southern and came up with a incredibly better solution than what we started with. So it was much better solution, and oh, by the way, it was something we could pay for. It was less expensive as well. And so again, I'll give credit to VPRA and to Norfolk Southern and all the team that dug in to make sure that happened, and we just had a much, much, much better result. So even if it had cost the same as this current solution, even if it had come in at the same cost, we still have a much better solution because of the stuff that DJ is going to talk about right now. So I just wanted to double down on that. Thank you and your team. Thank the folks at Norfolk Southern for working with us collaboratively in finding a really great solution for Virginia. And I will say, DJ, to go back a little bit to the Long Bridge thing, we've gotten so accustomed to talking about it, and it's just sort of one of those things we talk about and move on, but the impact to fluidity of commerce and people on the East Coast of the United States is profound. It's profound to have this new bridge there, because that's the only bridge that allows people to get from south to north. And it's conflicted with passengers and too much freight, and it's a bottleneck and a problem. And this literally doesn't just help Virginia, it literally helps the entire East Coast of the United States in a significant way. And by virtue of helping the East Coast of the United States, it helps the whole country in a significant way. It is very significant in my view. And so I just don't want to let that be lost, that the Long Bridge project has huge impacts to freight fluidity and passenger fluidity across the East Coast. So if you'll, thank you for letting me jump in there.
Thank you, sir. I was feeling no pressure before, and now I'm feeling a lot of pressure to deliver in 2030. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Part of
It's not going to change.
Yeah, that I know. Part of the New River Valley solution was us purchasing the Manassas line from Norfolk Southern. So the Manassas line goes from, as you see on the map, left to right, Alexandria, Virginia, out to Broad Run. It's where the VRE runs the Manassas line every day. It is a piece of railroad that used to be much more heavily traveled by freight, and we tried to purchase it back in 2020, but Norfolk Southern felt it was a key part of their network. The traffic there has gone down quite a bit on the freight side, and so at this time they were willing to sell it to us. We negotiated a deal with Norfolk Southern for a couple reasons. Number one, it gives us control. We will have the ability, both on the Manassas line and the RF&P that we purchased from CSX a few years back, to control the dispatch and control the maintenance, all of that. VRE, as a key partner, came to us and said, look, we'd like to help buy this because we rely on this every day for our service. So they committed to giving us $155 million. Walking through what we purchased, and if you go again left to right, in Alexandria, there's a big yard called the Seminary Passage. That's a place where VRE will be able to store their cars. It's not on the actual right-of-way that we go through, but it's right next to it. We got that passage. We got the horn track that goes around and connects really the RF&P to the Manassas line, or allows you to come south and then kick west. And then we've got the whole right-of-way going to Broad Run, to include a strip of just under 3 miles of land that can be used in the future as a third track in Broad Run to allow the VRE trains to go into their service facility there. So it was really, to the Secretary's point, a very, very good deal for Virginia. VRE helped us purchase that, and now what they're looking to do is purchase control of pieces of that from us. They'd like to purchase the Seminary Passage, the yard there, so they can store their trains, and also that piece of blank land between the right-of-way and Broad Run. We're contemplating giving them easement on one track so they can run on the one track west to east, and then a handful of platforms they'll have easements to. So that's what we have agreed with them to sell to them or transfer to them for the money they've paid us. We can't do that without CTB approval. So those you see, here's just a zoom-in picture of where the yard is that they'll be purchasing. They gave us $155 million. The appraised value is exactly $155 million, so they're paying us appraised value, and we're looking for the CTB's approval on that. Any questions I'm happy to answer. We'll come back next month in the action meeting.
Ms. Lawson?
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I'm curious, you may have mentioned this before, when we bought it from Norfolk Southern, do they retain any rights to it or the ability to claw it back? I've heard of that on other transactions.
They can't claw it back. They retain the rights to run on it and pay us access fees. So we have an agreement with them where we run trains on their railroad. So for example, when we go down to Christiansburg, we'll go on their main line and we will pay them access fees. They have that same reciprocal right to run on our track that we purchased and pay us access fees.
Thank you.
But they can't take the right of way back from us.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, DJ.
And then here's just a summary of the capital budget changes. The first line, I already mentioned the first line, the $6 million for the parking, so we're good on that. Minor changes, we split out our Staples Mill State Good Repair project from our overall stations project just because we've got a separate grant for that, and we figured we'd identify that separately. But pretty consistent with what we showed you all last year. Again, from a timing point of view, we intend to come back in the summer with an amended budget that updates us on the numbers for those three big negotiations. Here's a quick look at the revenue sources, pretty much unchanged from last year, but you can see where we're getting the money for those three sets of projects, the I-95 corridor, which is everything on the East Coast, obviously, Western Rail, and then those are projects that we manage for VRE and just small grant projects. This just reminds you all of the code that says that you have until May 30th to approve or deny the budget, so we're here presenting. We'll be back next month to hopefully get your approval. And with that, I will leave you with a timeline of what happens in the summer. We'll be back in June, July to update you, as I've said now way too many times.
Yes, sir, Mr. Stamp.
I'm assuming that all these federal grants and all the federal money involved in these projects is committed and not going to be any issue with funding.
We don't believe it will be an issue, Mr. Statler.
That's correct. We have high confidence that the biggest amount of our awarded grants has already been obligated, the $729 million, so that is in place, and we've seen no issue with that at all. We work with the FRA very closely, and we have a high level of confidence that they won't be impacted.
So we're waiting for our notice to proceed, and we understand that will be coming in the proper amount of time. So we're not concerned. Anyone else? Great presentation, sir. We're excited for you and for us.
Thank you all.
The next item on the agenda is item number 2. It's the Economic Development Access Program allocation request from Pulaski County, Botetourt County, and the city of Lynchburg. Terry Short.
Mr. Secretary,
Welcome,
and
sir.
members of the board.
Hope you're doing well this morning.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, good morning. I'm Terry Short. I'm the Division Director for the Local Assistance Division, and it is my pleasure to be here to join you this morning to discuss the aforementioned projects. We have 3 projects for you this morning under our bonded Economic Development Access Program for the funding for the Pulaski County, Botetourt County, and the city of Lynchburg. So this is just a quick overview of the program. The program provides allocations for projects with known industries or prospective industries, and for those that are purely speculative. Principally focused on constructing new roads or improvements to existing roads or to serve new business expansions. It is a state-funded program administered by, again, VDOT Central Office Local Assistance Division. Applications are on a rolling basis. A business must be designated as a basic employer by the VEDP, the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, for the EDA program to be able to participate. 51%, and what that means is that 51% of the facility's revenue must be generated outside of the Commonwealth, and VDP determines if a business meets that basic employer requirement for us. So they do a lot of heavy lifting for us, and we appreciate it. So again, all 3 applications today are bonded applications, which provides funding to localities where there isn't yet a firm contract or the identity of the user has not yet been disclosed. The locality must provide a surety to cover the provided allocation and has 5 years from the allocation to meet the capital investment requirements of the program. There's a 5-year time limit associated with the program, after which there's a payback provision for pursuant to board policy. The maximum program allocation provides per project up to $850,000, with $150,000 of that being matched dollar for dollar by the applicant. So again, I've mentioned the 3 locations, and we'll jump into the first one here. This is the proposed allocation in the New River Valley Commerce Park, which is a 1,000-acre industrial park located in Pulaski County. The NRV Commerce Park is 3.5 miles from I-81, 30 miles from I-77, and adjacent to the New River Valley Airport. The proposed project will provide access to Lot H, and I'll show you a map here in a moment, in the New River Valley Commerce Park, which is a 55-acre parcel. The newly proposed access project will be the third in the Commerce Park's history. The 2 previous projects have been completed and attracted both Patton Warehousing and Watson Town Trucking. I think I got that right?
Good.
The proposed access road extends an existing road to serve, again, that 55-acre lot. It's a total estimated cost of about $1 million, but the county has requested $850,000, so the full allocation. $750,000 unmatched and $150,000 matched dollar for dollar, bringing us to the $850,000. The Salem District, our friends in Salem District have reviewed and concurred with the project estimate as well. So here's a neat map overviewing the access road and what it contemplates, and extends International Boulevard approximately 0.37 miles to Lot H. It's currently negotiating with a business who will construct a facility on Lot H, and is currently designated as a Tier 4 site. The Virginia Business Ready Site Program is built around the tier level system, just as a reminder. And what that means is a Tier 1 is basically raw land, unimproved, no facilities on it whatsoever. And a Tier 5 is pad ready with full infrastructure and permits in place for development. And then in order to meet that Tier 4 criteria and certification from VDP, it has to be listed on the VDP website. It has to be zoned industrial. All due diligence must have been completed, and all infrastructure improvements are in place, or plans for infrastructure improvements are completed, approved, and delivered within the next 12 to 18 months. With that, we have, again, working with our partners at VDP, develop a scorecard. You'll see this 3 different times for the 3 different projects. It scored really, really well with a score of 85. We use 5 criteria when we score each request: the expected total capital investment, the site's potential for investment and expected potential full-time job creation, the need for the access road, and the locality's level of economic distress as defined by VDP. This project scored, again, 85 out of 100. It needs to score 50 in order for us to bring it to the board for your consideration. It's anticipated to generate a capital of investment of $10 million. In fact, on April the 3rd, the governor announced that Patton Logistics Group would be constructing a new distribution and warehouse facility here associated with the project, an investment of $10 million, yielding 25 new full-time positions. So, which is
Stuart, let me speak to that a minute.
Yes,
As Mr. Schwartz indicated, about 10, 12 days ago, the governor's announced this project, and it's Watson Town, all one word. That's the name of the company. Patton Logistics is an affiliated company, but it's a great company. They're investing $10 million in this project. The governor gave them a $100,000 grant from the Commonwealth Opportunity Fund to assist, and this is in concert with that as well. But the thing that struck me a little bit as we just went through the New River Valley project for VPRA, and then here we got another New River Valley project, is that area of the Commonwealth is really doing quite well in terms of these opportunities, and it's great to see. And one of the reasons is I'm going to quote from Mr. Patton, Steve Patton, who's the president of the company. What started out in 2020 as a speculative real estate investment and potential expansion of a logistics company into Southwest Virginia has turned into a significant supply chain solution for many of our clients. My coworkers in Southwest Virginia have been amazing and have given me the confidence to continue our expansion and investment into the Dublin area. The proximity to major interstates 81 and 77, along with availability for us to find hardworking, reliable, and honest workforce, have helped make our company an attractive option for clients looking for a supply chain partner. He goes on to say, I'm especially thankful to Economic Development Executive Pulaski and Governor Youngkin, et cetera, et cetera. But that's what's going on in the New River Valley. And it's the people and the place and a little bit of nudge from the government, and this is what happens. And so I'm just ecstatic that we just see this kind of thing going on, and I just wanted to double down on that, Mr. Short, so thank you.
So much, Mr. Secretary. It's an exciting time for Virginia. It's a great example of what this program can help foster. So moving on to our second application today is a proposed allocation at Botetourt Center in Greenfield, which is a county-owned economic development park located in Botetourt County. To the north is 31 miles away is Interstate 64, exit 280. To the south, about 3 miles away, is Interstate I-81, exit 150B. There are 5 companies with existing and future operations at the center, employing approximately 1,500 individuals, with approximately 450 acres remaining for business development. The new proposed access will be the 5th EDA project in the park. The 4 previous projects have all been completed and attracted the following businesses: Koyo Steering Systems, which is now New Belgium Brewing, Altec Industries, Eldor Corporation, and Munters. So another good success story. The proposed access project will construct a new road to provide access to lots 4 and 5 with an estimated cost of $1.5 million. And the county has requested the full allocation of $850, again, $700,000 unmatched, and then $150,000 matched dollar for dollar. And again, our friends in Salem Salem District have reviewed and concurred with the estimate. So here's just sort of an overview and an illustration of where the access road would be located. Again, it'll extend from International Parkway to 1,400 feet to provide access to lots 4 and 5, as well as a right turn lane for the new access road on US 220. It's received a Tier 3 status from the VDP designation for the business-ready sites. In order to hit a Tier 3, which is different from the Tier 4 previously, it needs to be zoned industrial or commercial development for commercial development land use. All due diligence has been completed, master planning and preliminary engineering work, and infrastructure has been also completed. And then utilities for 4 and 5 would make the lots eligible for a Tier 4. So again, we develop a scorecard with our friends at VDP, also scored really well, 85 out of 100. The site's anticipated to generate a capital investment of at least $4.25 million, and anticipates that at full build-out will attract an employer to create an upwards of 50 new full-time jobs. Botetourt is currently not designated as a distressed locality, and it has an unemployment and poverty rate below the state average. And lastly, but not least, as a project in the city of Lynchburg, it's the Ivy Creek Innovation Park, which is a city-owned economic development park. It is 33 miles away from I-81, 1 mile away from US 221, and the site has rail access. It's one of the city of Lynchburg's top-performing industrial sites. It's home to major employers such as BWXT, Frito-Lay, L3 Harris, and Total Plastic Solutions and Boxley. The new proposed road would provide access to sites A and B with an estimated project cost of $3 million, and the city has requested the maximum allocation. You may be wondering, that's a fairly large capital investment. The reason is for topographical and geological reasons is the reasons for the principal driver for that cost. But again, they've requested the city's covering the rest of it and have asked for the $700,000 in unmatched and $150,000 matched dollar for dollar. Back to that one. The access project will construct, again, about a 1,270-foot-long access road off of Lynchpin Lane to serve sites A and B. It is a Tier 3, just like the last application, and it's certainly a busy spot of economic activity. So we conduct pull together a scorecard. It scored really well, 75 out of 100. The site's anticipated to generate a capital investment of $2.55 million, and anticipated to, once completed, to attract 50 to 100 new full-time jobs. The city is currently a designated double distress locality, and it has an unemployment and poverty rate above the state average. So with that, in terms of next steps, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have today. In May, we would present resolutions proposing to establish the 3 new ED projects, and then upon approval, we would work with the applicants to enter into our standard project state aid agreements, and then anticipated that all 3 projects will be locally administered. So with that, are there any questions?
Does anyone have any questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Tan.
Is VDOT responsible for the ongoing maintenance of these roads that we're building?
That's a good question. So typically, we would, if it's serving more than 3 sites, then yes. Relative to
Commissioner
the
Bridge.
city of Lynchburg, it would be maintained by the city of Lynchburg.
Mr. Secretary, Mr. Short answered the question.
City of Lynchburg. In this case, it's the city of Lynchburg. It's in the city, and we don't maintain the city's roads, except in some special circumstances.
Secretary,
Primary extensions and things like that.
you all may remember that a year or so ago, maybe 2 years ago, we approved another industrial access allocation to Botetourt County for the same industrial park. I met with the county administration last week, and Terry, they tell me that they will be returning or forfeiting that approved request because they were able to get the industry to build the road itself in a different location that better serves the needs of that industry. So that money is coming back to the pot.
Well, the great news is the project is going forward and somebody else is going to pay for it,
Exactly.
right? This isn't one we've lost.
Win-win.
This is one we've gained.
That's right.
It's a twofer. So thank you, Dr. Smoot, for pointing that out. Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Short. Appreciate it. The next item on our agenda is item number 3, Smartsville project cancellations. Ms. Kim Pryor. Welcome. Good morning, Ms. Pryor. Hope you're well.
I'm well, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Secretary, members of the board. I have 3 smart scale cancellations to brief you on this morning. As a reminder, once a project has been selected for funding through the Highway Construction District Grant Program or the High Priority Projects Program, it can only be canceled by an action of this board. Today, we're talking about 3 projects. 2 of them are in the Stanton District, both in the city of Stanton, and the other one is a roundabout in the Hampton Roads District in Sussex. First project is the North Augusta sidewalk from Lambert to Terry Court. It was submitted by the city of Stanton in round 3. The total project cost was about $1.5 million, and it was fully funded with district grant funds. The project included a new sidewalk, pedestrian access improvements within the existing right-of-way from Lambert Street to Terry Court. Most of the benefits were due to safety, economic development, and environment. Again, the total cost of the project was $1.5 million. It was fully funded with district grant funds. It got a score of 8. It ranked 11 out of 20 within the district for that cohort. And to date, nothing has been expended. I'll talk about the second Stanton project before we move on. So the North Augusta sidewalk from Terry Court to Meadowbrook Road was also submitted by the city of Stanton in round 3. The original cost was just over $1 million, and it was fully funded with district grant funds as well. This project included a new sidewalk, some ADA-compliant curb ramps along North Augusta Street. The benefits were due to safety and environment. This project, again, was $1.1 million, fully funded with district grant funds. It scored 6.4 and ranked 15 out of 20 in that cohort. This project also has no expenditures. Since these projects were selected for funding, the project estimates have increased significantly due to inflation and additional right-of-way and utility impacts that weren't anticipated originally. The City of Stanton is looking at its portfolio of projects and assessing where they can apply additional local funds, which are limited. So they are prioritizing other projects within the city at this point. And in March, we received a letter from the city requesting the cancellation of both of these projects. Moving on to the Hampton Roads project, the roundabout at Route 35 and 40 was submitted by the Sussex County in round 5 of Smart Scale. The original cost was about $13 million, and it was fully funded with district grant funds. The scope included installation of a single-lane roundabout at Route 35 and Route 40, and the conversion of a commercial entrance to a right-in, right-out at Sussex Drive. The benefits were due to safety. Again, the project was $13 million. It scored 4.75 and ranked 22 out of 27 within the cohort. It currently has no expenditures. Since the project was submitted in the 2022 timeframe, VDOT installed a four-way stop configuration at this intersection as an interim measure. That interim measure has addressed the safety concerns at the intersection, and the county recently passed a resolution requesting cancellation of the project. VDOT will continue to monitor the traffic safety at this intersection, and should there be a need to advance further improvements, we will do that at that time. So recommended action will be to approve these project cancellations at your May meeting. For the Stanton projects, all construction district grant funds will be moved to the Stanton District Balance Entry. The Hampton Roads project, all of the district grant funds will be moved to the Hampton Roads Balance Entry. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
We have any questions? Mr. Coleman?
It's more of a comment. It's kind of reminds me of the statement you made about the railroad. This was a win. To solve a safety issue, they installed 4 stop signs rather than spending $13 million, and it appears to be getting the right safety appropriateness that it needed. So I just want to commend the district team down in Hampton Roads for their forthsightedness to look at this as another way of solving an issue and improving safety. Thank you.
Coleman? Ms. Nutmont?
Yes, I'm just curious, when you learn from a locality that they've determined that there are going to be increased costs, moving utilities and so forth, does that money just come out of their budget? Because you say no funds have been expended to do this project, and then you say they've determined the cost is going to be higher. How does that work, really?
Usually when a project is selected for funding, we'll do some pre-scoping work on it before the project gets authorized for preliminary engineering. So the county and VDOT district staff have been doing some of that data collection and evaluation of the estimate further than what was done as part of the application. And so then a determination is made, in this case, that the costs were just something that couldn't be covered by the county and not with the district grant funds either.
Ms. Dunlop, let me make a couple remarks. So Smart Scale goes back to, in its discussion back to 2012, 2011, whatever. And I was not here when it actually was started. I was here when it was beginning to start. But the mechanisms that were put in place and so forth, and the scoring system being approved, I was not on the board at that time. And what we found, like you find in many infant programs, is that initially we didn't do the greatest work in understanding the costs. And that's because initially, we pretty much relied more heavily on the local folks to tell us what they thought the costs were. And we didn't put as much time and effort into auditing that. And so over time, round one, round two, round three, we found ourselves stumbling a bit as we waded in. And things change in the interim too, right? It isn't all about we didn't do due diligence or they didn't do proper due diligence. Sometimes things change. And I'll tell you, as somebody who put cable in the ground before, a lot of times you don't know what's down there. We should know, but we don't know, right? We actually don't know what's down there a lot of the times. Nobody knows, because over time, they just didn't keep good records and things got lost and confused. And so when you go into these things, you find things that you don't know. But I think VDOT and the CTB and others have worked diligently over numbers of years to try to push that out. And now we require our district folks to really do due diligence on those costs and sort of audit them before they come to us. And so we're continuing to get better in this regard. But some of that goes back to that sort of comment I made about VPRA and 0% design, 0% construction. You know, when you let somebody asking for money, that's a system of cost benefit, is how it gets scored, and they get to tell you what the cost is. It doesn't always work out so well if you don't have somebody on the other side making sure that that's an accurate cost. And so I think the whole team's been working hard over numbers of years, and we're a much better place, but we continue to see these in round twos and threes and so forth. I really hope that in round six, that some board isn't going to come back here in 4 or 5 years and say, you didn't get it right, right? Not because something changed, not because there was no way to know, but because we didn't do enough homework. And so we're really working really hard to make sure we do that so that we don't have these projects canceled for the reasons we don't want them canceled, which is we didn't do our homework. I think we've gotten much better, Commissioner. All right, thank you. Kim. Anyone else for any other questions? All right, thank you. Next item is item number 4, the fiscal year 2025 budget revision, the financial impact of the emergency response. Ms. Laura Farmer.
Morning, Mr. Secretary, members of the board.
Welcome, Ms. Farmer. I hope you're well today.
I'm doing okay. I hope
Great.
you are as well.
I'm doing great, thank you.
I'm here today to provide an update as to VDOT's activities in the last couple of months to manage the emergency response efforts that we had over this last several months, beginning in the fall of 2024. So in December, you all heard a briefing from John Scrivani, who provided an overview of VDOT's response to what was then Tropical Storm Helene and its impact on Virginia. At the time he briefed you, the estimate for Helene's damages was $132 million. Today, our current estimated cost is $208 million with significant debris removal. Over the course of the winter season, we also encountered extensive snow, ice, and flooding response, and our current estimated cost between now and the end of the year is almost $445 million. This table summarizes the anticipated cost. Through April 8th of last week, our Helene response expenditures were just about $104 million, snow and ice at $401.5 million, for a total of $506 million to date. We have remaining costs for these events of $156.5 million, with a total of $662.5 at the end of the day. There are costs related to these responses that will trickle into the subsequent fiscal year. And so our current year anticipated costs all in is $640.3 million based on current estimates. VDOT's emergency response budget inside our maintenance and operations program is $220 million. So our current estimated deficit is just over $420 million. So with that, we implemented some administrative actions to save money within the agency. We paused all recruitment for vacant positions, both classified and waged, with the exception of our maintenance field staff. Any exceptions to that were approved by the commissioner. Travel was also limited. We asked folks to consider virtual options where possible, and we also limited out-of-state travel from this point forward. We also delayed or canceled training opportunities for staff and asked them to defer those to a subsequent date. And we also delayed any planned purchases for the remainder of the fiscal year. And we looked at balances across all of our budget programs outside of construction projects. Those efforts across the agency identified $44.7 million in administrative savings. So with those implemented and in place, in order to get those funds to our maintenance program, a revision to the current fiscal year budget is required. This provides that $44.7 million to our maintenance program, and it also provides from those savings. And I failed to mention in the previous slide, let me go back for one moment, is the General Assembly also has a pending employee bonus that will be paid out in June 16th. This is an unanticipated cost for the agency, and so while we were reviewing all of this material, we're also including that as a cost that the agency must incur by year end once the governor signs the budget. So I'll go back and just talk about a little bit about how we identified other strategies to cover costs. Within our maintenance program, our policies related to emergency responses, the districts know going in that each district's budget, that they are responsible for 10% over their budget related to expenses incurred for snow and ice. They also deployed several saving strategies to delay or defer work between now and the end of the fiscal year. We also looked at all program and project balances inside the program. As we close out paving contracts, we have remaining balances on those, and those are the examples of the types of balances we were able to identify and sweep for this effort to cover cost. In addition, we also had federal funding come in this fiscal year. A lot of reimbursements from FEMA came in for events that came in prior to Helene, some of them as far back as 2022. And so we received $73.2 million when we put together this information. And then we had emergency relief from FHWA for damages to Route 58 of $10 million. So those are two revenue items that are being included as a savings strategy. So all in inside the maintenance program, in addition to the federal revenue we received, we identified $185 million to contribute to the effort. So with that and the administrative savings, we have solved for $230 million of the $420, with a remaining deficit of $190. Most of what we've incurred related to Helene reflects things that can be reimbursed from federal sources in the future. And that future federal reimbursement of these sources is estimated between $211 to $260 million. To walk through the table, we have FEMA reimbursements that may be received by the end of the year as they continue to work through that process with FEMA, as well as the Virginia Department of Emergency Management of just over $60 million. Our early estimates for Helene and those eligible activities range from $146 million to $195 million. And we also had a flooding event that has potential for emergency relief of $4.9 million. So with all of this in mind, the alternative would be that we would make significant reductions inside our construction program and slow down projects. VDOT would like to pursue an interagency loan from the construction fund to fund these anticipated costs. So this provides temporary relief to our maintenance and operating fund from the construction fund and covers those anticipated costs with the pending anticipated emergency support coming from mainly FEMA. We will continue to monitor those reimbursements and then relieve the loan as soon as practicable when those come in at a future date. Right now, that number stands at $190.2 million to cover the anticipated deficit. This slide just provides a summary of the revised budget that is in your packet for consideration at today's action meeting. The FEMA reimbursements, as well as the future anticipated federal reimbursements, total $273.4 million. In addition, the table below summarizes the program allocation adjustments where we identified balances and were able to provide those to our maintenance program, as well as account for current and future federal reimbursements, all in totaling $273.4 million. VDOT's revised budget will total $9.14 billion with the additional federal resources, and the original budget was $8.87. So in terms of recommended action, VDOT requests that the board approve the revised fiscal year 2025 budget. This action allows us to take those identified resources, provide it to the maintenance program for these costs, as well as put the dollars in place and get ready for a year-end close. And then the interagency loan will allow VDOT to close the year out with the funding support to support necessary cost. Be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Farmer. Let me take you back sort of big picture here. So we had 220 million or so that was budgeted for emergencies. And emergencies include snow, they include this kind of horrific damage with Helene and things of that nature. And all told, we're saying it's about 3 times that. So we got a $400-some million gap. And what do we do with that? Right? How do we pay that bill? Well, typically you pay that bill by the way we're trying to pay it and also by cutting construction. It's what we call in our budget crossover, different than what the Assembly calls crossover. But it's basically taking construction dollars out of construction, out of our funding formulas. It flows down 49 to 51. We take some of that 49% and we say, we're not going to do those projects now, we're going to do our maintenance. And we cross over from construction to maintenance, which means those construction projects will still get done, it's just going to take them longer to get done. And the next year, the same thing could happen. It could get longer again and longer again. And so as we face these issues over the last numbers of months, at the same time, maintenance is driven by the standards that we set, some outside standards, but also the standards that we set at the board, the performance standards. What's the pavement condition? What's the bridge condition? How much ditching do we do? How much this do we do? How much that do we do? And we set those standards at this board level in most cases, and we try to meet those, right, as best we can. And so it's always this balance when you don't have scads of money. There's always this I should rephrase that. When you don't have as much money as you need, there's always this balance as to how much maintenance do you do versus how much construction do you do. And obviously, if there's a hole in your roof, you need to fix the hole in your roof, not put the new rec room on the back before you do that. And so the commissioner and I spent a fair amount of time discussing how to deal with this. And I would tell you, and I've said this before, that I could have pushed the position really hard that would have driven our construction budget through the floor, right? I could have made a case for that. By not doing some of these things that we're doing here, by not considering this loan, by not, perhaps by overemphasizing getting to some of our maintenance goals quicker. And at the end of the day, I mean, maybe it wouldn't have gone to zero, but our construction, our smart scale might have been 200 or 300 million. 200 or 300 million for the whole state of smart scale. Now, this year, round 6, it's $1.1 billion, right? And we spent a lot of time trying to get to $1.1 billion because at the end of the day, we got to make sense of it, right? We can't just make it up. It's got to come from somewhere. So we spent a lot of time trying to get there, and I think it was the right decision, and that's why we brought it to y'all as $1.1 million, not as 200,000 or 300,000 or 400,000. But part of that required us to fund this gap, this almost $200 million gap. And in our balance sheet, in our budgeting process in VDOT, we have a fair amount of cash because of the way our cycle works. So we've got cash before we do the work in construction. And that cash it's not just in time cash. It's ahead of time cash. And so that allows us some flexibility to do these kinds of things, where we say, we can go take some of this cash and use it right now because we know we're going to get that cash back from FEMA, right? And so what Laura has showed you, Ms. Farmer has showed you, is that we expect to get somewhere in the neighborhood of $211 to $260 million of FEMA money. You will see earlier, we're using some old FEMA money that's coming in now to make this less of a problem. But this FEMA money that comes in later is going to pay this loan back, and then whatever's left could be used to address a similar problem in the future. And so we believe this is a way to keep our construction program going, to keep, which, oh, by the way, is getting eaten alive by construction inflation. So every year that we don't do it, you know, what's our run rate on construction inflation the last couple of years, Commissioner?
Over the last 3 years, 24%.
24%, right? So that's what's happening. So every year you don't do that, you're just eating into the corpus of what you're trying to accomplish. So we made the decision to recommend that we make this loan to ourselves, if you will. We've got the cash sitting over there. It's not generating 24%, I can promise you that, right? And so we're playing this game, not this game, but we're playing we're doing this work to try to make sure that we manage our money properly. And so I want to salute the team. I mean, they really dug into the cushions to find all the other monies. But at the end of the day, we're 190 short. And we can do one of two things. We can either fund it through this mechanism, or we can take it out of construction and need 24%, as we've talked about, and that wouldn't be the right thing to do. So that's what we're recommending. Ms. Sellers.
Chairman, are we going to get a little bit more information on how this is going to impact different districts? And I bring that up because we're presenting this as though each district is created equal, and they're not. We do have 3 districts that have these entities where they have their own little pots of money, which they do have special taxing authority. But so what's going to happen is they're going to continue building and constructing things while all the others are kind of held stagnant. And then you also have the 81 corridor, which the General Assembly has also created, a mechanism to continue construction there. So my concern is that some districts will take on a greater burden than other districts. And so I would just want to make sure that some of us aren't going to be.
So I'm not fully understanding your point. So what we're saying is to keep the budget the way we want it to be. I think you got 2 separate situations, and they're both accurate. But to keep the budget the way we want it to be, we're $190 million short.
Right.
Right? And we can either take that out of construction, or we can find another way to fund it. That's one set of issues.
Right.
What you're talking about with the 4, perhaps 5, if you want to count 58, but 4 sort of funding mechanisms that are outside the normal system with CVTA, MVTC, and HR TAC, and 81, they're not impacting us by that methodology until we have to start maintaining those roads down the road.
Unless we say we want to impact this project and those entities say, what if we front the
project?
cash?
What
Whatever
project?
project is moved further down. And
But it's
so-
not going to be moved further down. That's
Well,
why we're making a
That's what I
loan.
want to see is which projects are we delaying
We're
in
not
this
delaying.
process?
Ms. Sellers, we're not delaying.
Well, then where are we getting the cash from? That's what I want to know is
What I'm
where are we
explaining,
getting?
Ms. Sellers, if you let me finish. We're taking the cash from a savings account that's not going to be needed for 5 or 6 years. That's what we're doing. We have cash in a savings account. It's called construction in the out years. We get the money earlier, we don't spend it till later, and so we have a savings account of cash. We go and we borrow from construction. They're not going to use that money. They're not going to use that money until that money's paid back, which will be before they need it. So all we're doing is taking out of the savings account, which we will replace with this FEMA money that'll come in over the next year or so. and we'll put it right back in the savings account, and when construction needs it 3 or 4 years from now, it'll be sitting there. What we don't want to do is say, okay, let's stop construction on $190 million. Let's let inflation eat that away while we're getting 4% on our money in the savings account, and we're going to delay all the good work of these projects while we're also going to pay more money for them down the road. That's not what we don't want to do. So what your concern is exactly what we're addressing here to alleviate that. Now, the whole bit about 81 and all the rest of that, that's a separate matter that I've been talking about for over a year, and ultimately the legislature and the board is going to have to address that because we've got an uncle out there, a rich uncle, who keeps giving us more and more properties to maintain, and we don't have the maintenance money to maintain them with because it doesn't come into the top of the funnel where we split 49 to 51. It's outside the funnel. And so all those dollars that go to that are 100% construction, where our usual dollars, our main funding stream, gets split 51 to 49 after some off the tops. That's a different problem. That's going to come home to roost in 5 or 8 or 10 years from now, or 15. Some of it will come earlier, and you've heard the commissioner talk about one that will come earlier, which is HRBT. When we finish that in late 2026, I hope, Commissioner, I'll be standing there waiting with my hat in my hand. I talked to Mr. Bannis the other day. In late 2026, that's going to drop about 40 million, 36 million dollars, kaboom, into our need for maintenance just to operate the new 2 tunnels. So that's an immediate hit, right? Paving the road again 10 years from now is not immediate. This is going to be immediate because we got to pay people and technology and things to operate. So that's going to go, boom, it's going to be another $40 million that's going to come out of our maintenance budget to maintain something that never was created with any maintenance money associated with it. And as those things start stacking on top of one another, it's going to be a problem. And as you stack on top of that, the life cycle maintenance of all these other facilities that we're building, whether it's 81 or whether it's the express lanes or whatever it is, when you stack all that on top, that's going to exacerbate the situation. These are separate issues, but today, in terms of impact to the construction program, what we're trying to do is not have any impact to the construction program. So we borrow the 190 from ourselves. We're getting 3 or 4% on it or whatever we're getting. We're going to it's not going to be needed as cash for construction, and we're going to put it back when FEMA gives us our money. The alternative is to say, I'm cutting $200 million out of construction. That's the alternative. That's where we are. Ms. Sellers.
All these bills are going to come due about the same time, and that's my concern is that
No, ma'am,
all.
they're not. They're not. I just told you that. They're not going to come due at the same
But
time.
they are going to start coming due all at the same time, and we're using.
What bills are you talking about, Ms. Sellers?
Well, you're talking about we're going to use the savings account now to pay the stuff we need to pay now. We already know we have a $36 million bill that's coming due in a couple of years that we don't have the money to pay for, so.
No, we have the money. It's just going to come out of some other, we're just not going to do something
And so what I'm trying to
else.
see is, can we see the finances and actually open up the fund and see what's going on with the finances so that we can start making some informed decisions about this construction account?
I don't know what you want to see, ma'am.
And start having a conversation to maybe make more informed decisions and just stop looking at it as we want more projects. Because it's becoming very daunting to me that every year, and last year we had a similar conversation. So it just feels like we need more information than let's just go and approve this to borrow from here, and then we're going to do it again next year, and then the next CTB is going to do it the year after that. This is an every year thing. Every year we have done this.
Ms. Sellers, as I've indicated to you, maintenance is an increasing problem as it takes money more money to do maintenance than it has otherwise taken. And as we increase our standards, if and when we increase our standards, it's just going to take more. If we decreased our standards in the short term, it would take less. But that catches up with you. It's like fixing the little leak and then it becomes a big leak. So yeah, we know that's a problem. There's no opening up or information. We give you any information that you want. The bottom line is that maintenance costs are going up substantially. Construction costs are going up substantially. We only have the money that we have. That's what we have, right? And we are required to fund maintenance first. And that's what we do. Now, that's not hard and fast because we get to decide in some regards what that means because we set the standards of what maintenance needs to be. And like if you said you got to be, if you said you had to have a rating of 80 versus a rating of 70, then the 80 is going to cost you more than the 70, and we have to make judgments as to which one we want and what's the best course of action. So all those costs are going up. You're correct. At the same time, we're exacerbating that by having this outside the funnel construction money, which will just add to that as those maintenance and operational costs come online. So yeah, it's going to get worse, and that's why I've been talking about it for a couple years. In the meantime, today, what we're faced with is because of this $400 and some million shortfall in emergency work, mainly Helene and snow, we could go and just not do any of the things we did and say, take $400 million out of construction. We could have done that. But what we did is we dug every couch cushion we could find, and we got that number down to 190. And then we say, well, we don't want to cut 190 out of construction either. How do we get money? Well, we got this big savings account that's not going to be used. We won't need this $190 million for years. And so to sit here and cut construction, which would to the, I don't know what inflation is going to be the next 3 years, but you've heard what it's been and what we're seeing. To cut construction would not be financially responsible while we're sitting on this large savings account that's not generating that kind of interest, and we don't need that cash for years. So all we're doing is making a good financial decision to use cheaper money that costs less and has less impact than to use more expensive money that has a huge impact. We don't want to do that. That's where we are. It's very sort of straightforward to that point. Now, if you want to go see how much maintenance costs are going up, we can do a workshop on that for you individually as well, and we can show you anything you want to see. But that's where we are today. That's where we are today. Does that make sense, Mr. Davis?
Secretary, maybe I missed it. Is there an interest charge from the construction side of the house to the maintenance side?
No.
There's no interest charge for the loan?
No.
Free loan?
Free loan.
And so but that money is making money now, correct?
It is.
It's not going to make that whole? I mean, it seems like to me it would be incumbent to charge an interest rate to keep the construction money whole on its earning power. I'm not looking for profit, but it seems like you do something to keep the construction money whole, because otherwise you're going to get it back in a couple of years and it won't have made the money that it would have made just sitting there. Is that?
I could.
Yes, Ms. Farmer.
So the construction fund itself does not get to retain its own interest earnings.
Oh.
Both funds are committed by code to share their interest earnings with the Virginia Transportation Infrastructure Bank at 2/3 and the Transportation Partnership Opportunity Fund, or TPOF, at 1/3. And so neither fund retains its own interest.
Some of it will get lost because it
Not
doesn't
all.
get to keep it anyway, but it's not going to be earning it
Davis,
to
none of
fund those
it-
other two.
Let me be clear. None of it will get lost. It'll just be what bucket it's sitting in. And construction wouldn't have kept it to begin with. It would have gone to VTIB and TPOF. So they'll be
And those
impacted.
will be reduced by the amount of earnings it would have had in that
That's
time
correct.
period while we wait for the funds, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so there is some degradation of
Not in
funds.
construction, it's in TPOF and VTIB is undersubscribed currently significantly undersubscribed. Good point, but
right,
but
thank
I
you.
think it's alleviated. Mr. Coleman?
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Just a quick question, because we've talked a lot about maintenance and the driving cost, and as we add road miles in the state of Virginia that VDOT's going to be responsible for, and other unfunded liabilities like HRBT, 36 million a year, is there any thought to, in the construction phase, adding a percentage for future maintenance requirements, pick a number, but at least we'd have a set-aside amount of money perhaps to help fund and offset the maintenance increases, because right now it's 4951. It's liable to, as we add road miles and liabilities, it's liable to go even further liability toward maintenance. I just didn't
Mr.
know.
Coleman, that's above our pay grade, sir.
Okay.
The bottom line is, I wouldn't recommend that for our construction fund. What I would recommend is that we get thoughtful about all these outside dollars that are coming in and how we are going to keep up with the maintenance costs associated with them. But that's not in our control, number one. Those are all statutory, right? And our formulas are statutory. We can't change those here. The legislature and the governor can change those, and what I've been doing is trying to socialize the conversation enough so that enough people understand the situation so that the legislature and future governors can address those situations, as opposed to not saying anything and let them get smacked in the face in 6 or 8 years. So that's what we're trying to do here, but we can't do that at this board. Dr. Smoot.
Mr. Secretary, first, I applaud the efforts that have been made to address this internally, and it's never pleasant to have to make reductions midstream, but it seems to me you all have been somewhat effective in addressing that. If the federal monies were not to come, then we have a problem down the road, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it seems to me, and maybe perhaps you all are already
Well,
doing
let me
this.
rephrase. Look, we have the same problem we have today.
Yeah. Right.
Doesn't change the problem.
Right.
It just kicks it down the road.
Yeah. And do we have any other outstanding intra loans like this?
No, sir.
And it was saying to me, we need to keep that question before us moving forward. Should we need to do this again in the future? You know, we understand what all is out there. But I believe the time is rapidly approaching, and perhaps you've already done it. But we need to lift up to those in the General Assembly, the money committees or whatever, this maintenance matter.
Well, I've been doing that, sir, for,
Good work.
you're exactly right.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about it here. I talk to it when I address them. I talk to them about it individually. I talk about it a lot. So you're
Good.
exactly right. And I think we're doing that. We have some, I do it every opportunity that I think I can be heard.
Well, thank you, because the long-term implications of this is not good.
No, and listen, frankly, this is going to survive my watch just fine,
That's right.
right? I'll be off, somewhere, hopefully in Greece, Ms. Dunlop or someplace. Her trip got canceled, unfortunately, but I'll be off somewhere doing whatever I'm doing. I will not be here, because it's probably 6, 7, 8 years where it's really going to start impacting. Because listen, 81 hadn't been built yet, right? We haven't done, we're just starting construction on 81. All these other lanes are in Hampton Roads are being built right now. They don't need high maintenance dollars in the beginning. But 10 years from now, they're going to need some real maintenance dollars. And it's like somebody was really nice to us, and they gave us a lot of little houses around our house. And it's great for 10 years, but when we start needing to work on roofs and caulk that's gone and so forth and so on, and we have the same income stream, we're like, whoa, 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 whoa. How do I do all these little houses now that I didn't have before? And that's what's going to come, and you're exactly right. And so I think we all need to keep talking about it. I talk about it every opportunity I have with the General Assembly and my briefings to them, and I'll continue to talk about it until January 17th at 12 noon.
Not that you're counting.
Not counting a bit. Ms. Dunlop.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. First of all, I really would like to commend you, your team, on this plan. I think it is, it demonstrates what every family of the Commonwealth needs to do when there's been an emergency. It's remarkable, and I think it's just great what the plan that you've put together. I do think also, Mr. Secretary, that it is incumbent on all of us to speak to the General Assembly members about this problem. I mean, this is irresponsible to really put future generations of Virginians at risk of higher taxes or problems with the road system, the infrastructure, by allowing these things to be, these projects to be constructed with no concept that maintenance is going to be required. We can all hope for roadways that don't require maintenance to come along sometime, but I really do think, I thank you for your leadership in this, and I think members of the General Assembly really owe it to the citizens that they work for to not put this burden on future generations. But I thank you for your work on this budget process right now.
You know, it's, look at Laura and the commissioner and the whole team. That's who figured this out. We've got a really good team. Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Ms. Farmer. Appreciate it very much. We are going to take a 10-minute break. I'm going to call us back in order. I'm going to change the agenda order a little bit and ask Joanne Maxwell, item number 8, to come forward to speak about the 2025 General Assembly Session overview. Ms. Maxwell, good morning. I hope you're doing well.
Good morning, sir. I am doing fine. I hope you're well as well.
Doing great.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm here to talk about various bills and legislative items that might be of interest to the board that transpired during the General Assembly session while I'm waiting for the presentation to come up. I just wanted to note that for this session, pre-filing began July 15, 2024, ended January 8, 2025. This year, it was a short session, meaning that by the Constitution, the session is only 30 days. The General Assembly has the prerogative of extending that to an additional 30 days. They extended by 15, so it was in essence a 45-day session.
Joanne, let's get the presentation up.
Okay.
I didn't tell them. There we go.
There we go. So, that being said, approximately this session, 3,100 bills or resolutions were introduced and reviewed by the agencies. VDOT tracked approximately 228 bills, 95 directly and 133 indirects, which have some potential impact on the agency. The House and Senate passed approximately 2,000 bills and defeated 1,458 legislative items. Some of those were bills that were carried over from the last session. The reconvened session, they adjourned on February 22nd, and then the General Assembly came back for a reconvened session on April 2nd, and that's where they consider all of the governor's various actions, such as veto or amendments to the bills. In this presentation, if bills have final dispositions, that is noted, there are 1 or 2 items, including budget items, that still await the governor's post-reconvened session action. So that being said, first thing I wanted to talk about was VDOT agencies bills. These are bills that the agency asked the governor to allow to be submitted to legislators, and they are important to the agency. The first one is SB 1082. That is the Commonwealth Transportation Special Structures Program Revenue Bond Act. Basically, what that bill does is authorize the CTB to issue revenue bonds for the Special Structures Program. Bottom line, the aggregate principal amount of the bonds that are issued under this act cannot exceed $1 billion, nor can any more than $200 million in principal, bond principal be issued in any single fiscal year. The issuance, we expect issuance of these bonds to begin in approximately 2028. This bill has been signed by the governor, so it is law.
Ms. Maxwell, can I ask you to pause for a minute? So you heard me earlier talk about the off the tops in terms of how we allocate money. And as you know, about 51% goes to maintenance, 49% goes to construction, and then all sorts of things happen in the waterfall. But there's some off the tops before that happens. And some years ago, the General Assembly created the Special Structures Fund, which is a fund that takes $80 million a year off the top and goes into this fund. And the fund's purpose is to provide monies for special structures in the Commonwealth. Special structures are defined as movable bridges and tunnels. And they have sort of extra maintenance needs. They're costly, they're hard to deal with, they take a lot of time, and they're usually pretty critical pieces of infrastructure. And so the General Assembly did that some years back and created that fund, and we've been building that $80 million, $80 million, $80 million up. What we were not allowed to do before today, or before the bill was signed by the governor and passed by the General Assembly, was we were not able to bond any of that money. So even though we knew we had a steady stream of $80 million a year, we had to do sort of pay as you go, right? And we had to get all that money. Well, I'm back to that discussion about interest rates versus inflation, right? And so interest rates are low, inflation is high. How do we get these things done faster? So by bonding this money, we can move the whole program ahead faster. Commissioner? And so let me read a press release that just came out from the governor. Governor Glenn Youngkin announced today that construction to replace the Robert O. Norris Bridge over the Rappahannock River between Northern Neck and Middle Peninsula will begin in 2028, 8 years ahead of schedule. 8 years ahead of schedule. Using monies made available through the Commonwealth Transportation Special Structures Program, Revenue Bond Act of 2025, construction to build a modern Norris Bridge with substantially wider travel lanes, fully functional shoulders, and significantly higher guardrails will start 8 years ahead of the planned 2036 groundbreaking. Quote, "It is time to build a modern bridge that will serve the communities of the Northern Neck and Middle Peninsula for the next 100 years," said Governor Glenn Youngkin. "Today, we are accelerating construction of a new Norris Bridge to meet the daily travel needs of residents and businesses and to welcome visitors to these scenic waterfront regions. Through this action, people will be driving over the new bridge almost a decade sooner than expected. The Norris Bridge carries Route 3 traffic over the Rappahannock River between Lancaster and Middlesex counties. The 1.9-mile bridge carries an average of 7,500 vehicles a day and opened to traffic in 1957. It has 2 travel lanes with no real shoulders. The next closest available land crossing to the Rappahannock River is located on Route 360 at the town of Tappahannock, about 40 miles to the west. If the Norris Bridge were to close for any reason, the full detour route is 85 miles. Due to the length of the Norris Bridge, it is one of 18 mega bridge and tunnel facilities in Virginia considered a special structure due to its size or complexity. The Commonwealth Transportation Board maintains a special structure 50-year long-range plan updated annually to fund needed maintenance and eventual replacement of these structures. Through the passage of Senate Bill 1082, carried by Senator Ryan McDougall and championed by many, including Senator Richard Stewart, Delegate Keith Hodges, and Delegate Hillary Pugh Kent, the CTB may issue revenue bonds for up to $200 million a year and up to $1 billion total to support the Special Structures Program. These bonds will be payable from revenues provided to the Special Structures Fund. While today we are celebrating an 8-year acceleration of a new Norris Bridge, this legislation will expedite our progress on improvements to other large bridges and tunnels across Virginia, which collectively carry hundreds of thousands of people every day, said Senator Ryan McDougal. This investment demonstrates our commitment to traveler safety and to the free flow of commerce across Virginia. Even if you live miles from one of these tunnels or bridges, the benefits will be experienced by all of us. Building safe, reliable infrastructure is foundational to the Commonwealth's ability to attract and retain businesses, encourage tourism, and care for its residents, said Virginia Secretary of Transportation, W. Shepard Miller III. This administration is making an investment in the future success of our state by addressing the Norris Bridge and other necessary bridge and tunnel projects with urgency. Preliminary engineering and advanced right-of-way acquisition is already underway for the Norris Bridge replacement. The new bridge will have 2 travel lanes and shoulders that meet current road design standards, and it will have higher rails than the current bridge. A design public hearing will be scheduled to share proposed design plans and gather public comment before construction begins. The Norris Bridge will remain open to traffic during the construction of the new bridge. Once the replacement bridge is open to traffic, the existing bridge will be demolished. Until the day the new bridge opens, our mission to the Virginia Department of Transportation will include ongoing maintenance and inspection of the existing Norris Bridge, said VDOT Commissioner of Highways Stephen C. Britch. Our team of engineers, road designers, inspectors, and maintenance staff will sustain the bridge as we deliver a new bridge on time and on budget for the Commonwealth. The Norris Bridge replacement is anticipated to be advertised to potential builders as a design-build project. Learn more about the replacement, da-da-da-da-da-da. So what you don't see as well as you might is that the lanes on this bridge are about 6 feet wide, and there's no shoulder. And when you look, well, there is a shoulder, but I don't, he says it's a shoulder. It ain't a shoulder.
Travel lanes are 11 feet.
He's 11.6 wide. But when you go over this bridge today, if you're in a high car, like a truck or a Suburban or something like that, you don't see the rail, right? It's there, but you don't see it. And what you see is another vehicle coming at you, and it's right here. And there's no rail, there's just water and air on the side. That's what you see. So people literally won't take the bridge. I was talking to a guy the other day, one of my friendly legislators. His wife closes her eyes or puts her head down. I mean, I can't tell you how many people are scared to death to drive over this bridge. And it's because it's so tight that if anything happens, it's a big problem. Now, thankfully, we haven't had a lot of big problems. You also note, and you look at this, and while we're not the Baltimore Channel here, this channel does not have large ships, but it has tugs and barges, and this is another one of those fracture-critical bridges. So if you hit that bridge in the right place, the whole thing can come down. A big, large section of it can come down. So we don't have as big a safety concern because of the ships or the maritime traffic that goes up this channel, but it's still a concern. So at the end of the day, what we've done, and you'll see this in the budget presentation, which is why I brought this up earlier than it was scheduled. What we've done is we've allowed this to get built 8 years earlier, and everything else is going to get accelerated across. This was already on the schedule, but it was on the schedule for 2036. So we're going to bring it almost a decade earlier, and it's about 60% wider, Mr. Britch, 60%. Okay, it's magnificently different. It'll have a 6'6" shoulder on each side. I'm telling you, the shoulder is that. You can call it whatever you want, but it's that, right? There is no real shoulder there. So you were literally, if you had a problem, you could pull over and traffic can continue to go. If there was an accident, there's ways to deal with it now. So it's radically different. And I will tell you on a personal note, this bridge was built the year I was born. My family has roots in Middlesex County. I've been driving over this bridge my whole life, and I'm not afraid of it because I'm used to it, but it's time for a new bridge. And because of Ryan and Senator McDougal, and really all the General Assembly that saw that this, not this bridge, but the whole program needed to be accelerated. And they passed this bill, the governor signed it. You're going to get a Norris Bridge 8 years earlier, and everything else is going to move up as well. So really excited to brief this to you. And that's our story for the day here. Are there any questions on this part of Joanne's presentation? This was a good one. We got to thank the General Assembly for understanding the needs here and to let us, again, make a good financial decision. This is a great financial decision for the Commonwealth. Not only do we get to use cheaper money as opposed to more expensive money, but we also get the benefits of all these programs many, many years earlier. Excuse me, in this case, almost a decade earlier, 8 years earlier, this will get built.
Can I add something, Mr. Secretary?
Yes, ma'am, you're welcome to.
They've held a lot of meetings and public hearings as we do, and I've attended several of them as a supervisor and FAMPO member and now CTB member. But the public hearing for the Norris Bridge was well-attended back in December, the latest one. And so the staff from the Fredericksburg District really has done a great job of advertising this and getting public involvement. And the folks in the area are very excited to see this. So that's kind of my passion, to make sure that projects like this don't get forgotten and pushed aside as money becomes tight, because they are concerned that this is going to be one of the projects that will get pushed aside should money become tight in the next few years. So I just want to
This
say they're
one's
very
going forward.
passionate.
Thank you, Ms. Sellers. As the Fredericksburg District Representative, this is the Fredericksburg District. But again, I want to emphasize, while I have this attachment to the Norris Bridge because I've used it so frequently and I have family roots in Middlesex where I still hang out, this isn't just about the Norris Bridge. This is just the beginning. It impacts everything in the schedule because now we've got money up front and everything moves earlier. So it's really a great win for the Commonwealth. I want to thank the governor and the General Assembly for agreeing to do this. I think it makes eminent economic sense. And so I'm just really excited and pleased to see it.
Mr. Secretary, to the extent we have other unused bonding capacity, are we looking at other projects as well, or do we have a team that are tasked to do that?
Commissioner.
Mr. Secretary, Mr. Lawson, part of the Special Structures Program and the 50-year plan has identified the suite of projects that would be eligible for the use of that. So we are looking at the additional bonding capacity and what could be advanced in that suite of projects at this point. We don't foresee any debt being drawn down until 2028. At that point, then we'll reevaluate what's remaining in the plan, but the first priority would be to make sure that we had adequate funding to be able to advance the Norris Bridge in its current state.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Well, this was a personal goal of mine, so I'm really excited to see it. Ms. Maxwell, we're going to revert to Ms. Farmer, and we'll call you back to finish your presentation after that. So we're going to go back. And we did that, folks, of course, because Ms. Farmer's presentation on our budget will include line items that would reflect this, this ability. And so we wanted to brief it to you before you saw it in the numbers. Ms. Farmer, item number 5, the draft fiscal year 2026 CTF and VDOT budgets. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So today I'm going to provide an update on information that I presented to you in January and what has changed since then, as well as present the draft 2026 budgets for both the Commonwealth Transportation Fund and for VDOT. So I'll provide a brief legislative update on the special structures debt authorization. The Secretary has covered the headlines related to that. In addition, the revenue and allocation updates that have been made since January and highlight those, and then presentation on the 2026 budgets. So advancing the needed improvements or replacements in the Special Structures Program saves on inflationary costs, as the Secretary mentioned. Over the last 3 years, VDOT has experienced 24% in cost escalation in our construction program, based on data analyzed by Balmoral as part of our cost estimating office and their work. Debt financing that we have assumed for the Special Structures Program has a conservative estimated 5% interest at this time. And obviously, there's an important value in delivering this project in a more cost-effective manner and delivering improvements sooner for Virginians. So though the current revenue stream for Special Structures is reliable, it is not sufficient to set aside money over many, many years to take care of a replacement project as large as the Norris Bridge. So as Joanne and the Secretary mentioned, Senate Bill 1082, or Chapter 327 of the signed bill, authorizes debt not to exceed $1 billion, and no more than $200 million can be issued in a given year. The security for that debt is the Special Structures funding that is committed. Currently, that is an off-the-top commitment from the Commonwealth Transportation Fund before further formula distributions. To date, our Highway Maintenance and Operating Fund, we have not recommended an infusion from that fund to help with Special Structures in this program. And obviously, as with all debt programs and the legislative structure, the issuance of the debt is contingent upon approval by this board, the Treasury Board, and the governor. So in terms of updates made to Special Structures funding in the 6-year financial plan, the top table just summarizes the off-the-top allocations. As the Secretary mentioned, it started at $80 million and grows by CPI annually. And so in 2026, the annual allocation for Special Structures is $90 million, growing to $102 by 2031. In terms of uses, what we've done in terms of updates is estimated the debt service requirements for bonds that we would begin to issue in 2028. And that debt service is retained off the top before other pay-go money is available for Special Structures. So we still have the same sources totaling $576 million over the 6-year period, but we also have the planned bond proceeds incorporated through 2031 of $538 million. So I'd like to go through the headlines of the 6-year financial plan and updates we've made since January. The total across all 6 years is $56.6 billion. This includes now $1.5 billion of debt dedicated to the Route 58 corridor, I-81's financing, Garvey bonds, and the new authorization for Special Structures. We also have scheduled transfers to the 3 regional entities of $6.4 billion over the period, as well as $1 billion of dedicated revenue for WMATA capital funds. It also includes the dedicated fuel tax revenue for I-81 of $554 million. We went over some infusions into the maintenance program over the 6-year period in January to address some of those cost implications of $18.1 billion over the period. And it also provides $15.4 billion in construction, with about 2 of that coming from other folks who contribute to projects and their delivery. This slide just provides a summary of the Commonwealth Transportation revenue estimate provided to us in December. We do not have an updated revenue estimate, and this is the estimate that we use for state revenue projections in our 6-year planning process. In terms of updates since January, we've incorporated 3 items that are revenue-related. Interest earnings from I-81. Once a fiscal year closes, we incorporate the end-of-year fiscal interest earnings on the I-81 fund into the subsequent fiscal year for planning purposes. So in 2024, we earned $21.2 million, and that has been reflected and available for projects on 81. We also included, from a federal perspective, the Appalachian Development Highway System. Virginia's allocation for this program was $21.4 million. We will be deploying those funds in the program on the Corridor Q project that is currently underway, and that simply swaps out other resources that are on Corridor Q and allows the Appalachian money to move forward. And then thirdly, as I just mentioned, the adjustments of the assumed debt for Special Structures of just over $538 million through 2031. So this table is just a highlight of the revenue streams available in the 6-year horizon. The green font on the slide indicates those changes that we've made since January. So in other fund revenue, the interest earnings for 81 is reflected here. In federal revenue, the Appalachian Corridor funds are reflected there. And then the special structures bonds are incorporated in the other financing sources section of the slide. This slide provides a view of the estimated allocations, and again, highlighted in green where there are changes. So our debt service estimates are greater in 29 through 31 because of the special structures allocations. In construction, we have incorporated the Appalachian Development Funding, and then in special structures, we've added the debt proceeds from beginning in fiscal year 2028. This slide provides a view of the 2026 draft budget for the Commonwealth Transportation Fund. It totals $9.2 billion with the sources provided in the table as well as the pie chart. I'd just like to mention that that is 8% lower than the 2025 budget, but there is a significant amount of one-time money in the 2025 budget, including over $80 million in federal earmarks, as well as general fund monies for toll relief and I-81, and those are not reflected in 2026 as a repeat, and so that accounts for a significant portion of the reduction. In terms of allocations, our maintenance funds, including both VDOT-maintained program as well as our locality payments, represent about a third of the total budget. Our construction program is about 29% when we include the regional funding, and rail and public transportation is 11% of the share. In terms of VDOT's budget, the draft budget provided to you for review is $7 billion when we don't include the regional programs, or $8 billion in total. We've also talked about crossover and what's needed by the Highway Maintenance and Operating Fund to support agency operations and the maintenance program, as well as city street payments. The total deficit expected in 2026 is $817 million. That's filled by both federal funds as well as a crossover of $533 million of state money from the construction fund. This next slide just provides a 5-year view of the trajectory of crossover and what is necessary to meet the obligations of the Highway Maintenance and Operating Fund and its allocations. This slide just provides a view of the VDOT recommended allocations and how they've changed since 2025. In construction, obviously, there is a significant amount of one-time money, as well as another year of the tunnel's construction going off the books, as well as other regional revenues. So we did have significantly more regional funds in 2025 as opposed to 2026, and that's really a project and timing concern, not a revenue concern related to construction projects. And then we showed the infusion in our maintenance program that we recommended to you in January. The reduction in toll facilities is really the one-time allocation for toll relief in 2025. There is more in 26, but it is not at the level that was provided in the first year of the biennium. And then the other adjustments are related to program allocation adjustments and debt for the program. So going forward, we have not reflected the updates for the biennial budget beyond the legislation for special structures debt. So in the meantime, as we wait for the governor to sign the budget, that includes additional money for I-81 and other adjustments that will be needed. Those will be made between now and June when you consider the final budget. And we'll bring those as well as the final 6-year improvement program in June. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Questions? Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it very much. Let me, the commissioner was trying to clean me up a little bit there. Appreciate it, Commissioner. On the Norris Bridge, I got overly enthusiastic. The travel lanes were not 6 feet wide. They are 10 feet 6 inches wide currently. They're going to 12 feet 9 inches. And with 6 foot 6 inch wide shoulders that aren't there now, which is what I was conflating. But my point to you is that the current bridge, the current travel area of the bridge is 23 feet wide. The new bridge travel area will be 38.5 feet wide. It's remarkably better, bigger bridge. So we're really excited about that. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. The next item on the agenda is item number 6, the draft fiscal year 2026 six-year improvement program and agency budget. Deanna is going to come up. Deanna O'Wary, DRPT. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good
I hope you're doing well
morning, Mr.
today.
Secretary and CTB board members. My name is Deanna Owari. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for DRPT, and I will be joined this morning with my colleagues Zach Trogdon and Emily Stock to present DRPT's six-year improvement program for fiscal 26 through 31. So just really quickly, a quick overview of our schedule. We started with workshops with our transit and rail partners in November of '24. It goes in a zigzag pattern here. And then from December to February, we accepted open applications from grantees. And since February 1st, our teams have been reviewing the applications in order to present the draft document for you all, which is found in that binder behind me. I think the DRPT program starts on page 625 or something like that. And it lists all of our detailed projects that we're recommending the board approve for funding in this draft. In April and May, we'll have public hearings, and then in June, on the 17th, we'll come back to this board and present any final findings for the six-year program. Go back one. Okay, so really quickly, just an overview of the SIP for the agency. The SIP identifies our planned funding for allocation for public transportation and rail projects over the next 6 fiscal years. We look at our revenue estimate that we receive from VDOT and the Department of Taxation. And then we also look at carry forward balances from prior years in order to determine the available funding that we have for the 6-year program. Our available funding for this fiscal year, for fiscal 26, is $971 million, and you can see that part of that is from the new revenue estimate, and part of that is from prior year carry forward balances. And then our preliminary allocations for the first year of the SIP is $879.9 million. The difference between the revenue and the allocations we will carry forward into the next year's SIP 27. Okay, so just really quickly, wanted to point out some of the revenue estimates and just talk about some of the highlights. You can see on the pie chart, our largest source of revenue is from the Commonwealth Mass Transit Fund, that's 55%, followed by the Commonwealth Rail Fund money that we actually pass through to the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority. That is 17% of the revenue that we pass through to them, and VPRA then manages those projects. And then we have the WMATA dedicated and other smaller portions. I did want to just mention that we do receive federal dollars mainly for our rural grantees, but the amount that we receive from FTA is about 7%. And then we also receive some money from Federal Highway, which these are transit-related federal highway type projects that we administer on behalf of the local transit agencies. But the selection of those federal highway projects is done at the local level by the MPOs, the Metropolitan Planning Organizations. In terms of year-over-year revenue growth, most of the revenue sources are growing year-over-year. And then I'll just forward so that you can see the next 3 slides have the details and where that is happening. So this first slide represents the Commonwealth Mass Transit revenues for the 6-year span. And you can see in each fiscal year how much we've grown since prior year's SIP. And so all of the amounts that are in the far column over there represent the increases that are mostly attributed to the revenue growth estimate that was presented this year. So, yeah. In total, Commonwealth Mass Transit funding is growing by nearly $250 million. The next slide is more detail of our other revenue estimates over the 6-year period. And this slide really highlights just the additional other public transit revenues. There is some, I'll just point out really briefly, there's some slight decline in the state match from the Transportation Trust Fund, which is linked to the Federal Highway Administration projects for CMAQ and RSTP. Again, those projects are decided at the local MPO level. There's some slight decline in there, but there could be some adjustments between now and the June SIP when those projects are more formalized and finalized with the locals and the MPO level. In total, the public transit funding for the year compared to prior year SIP, the revenue is increasing by $142 million. And then the last slide shows our Commonwealth Rail Fund revenues. And you can see in total that amount is increasing by nearly $84 million. And the grand total for the agency in terms of what we anticipate in receiving this year compared to last fiscal year, the revenue difference is $226 million. And so just really quickly to talk about the allocations. And this is the money, again, that we are recommending that the board review and approve, and then these are the dollars that we would award to our grant recipients that have applied and submitted applications. And so the public transportation merit and trip allocations are expected to increase by 4%. The growth in WMATA VRE and VPRA is driven by the formula-driven growth from the revenue forecast. We've had some growth from our rail program due to carry-forward balances and also the revenue forecast. And as I mentioned previously, there was slight reduction in the federal highway transit-related funding. And this page just shows that summary. It's the first column is obviously the program by major program area. The second column is 2025's allocations, and then the third column is in bold is what we would like to allocate for fiscal 26. Right, I'm going to turn it over to Zach Trogdon to talk about the public transit program.
Mr. Trogdon, welcome. Hope you're
morning.
doing well today.
Thank you. Yes, hope you all are too, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to go through our program sort of at a high level and then also just talk about our recommended funding scenarios for this year. You'll find details of your district and project level info in the 6-year improvement program if you get a chance to look at that, or you can check our website. We have a portal that can show you that in a more digital format if you so choose. So this thing is very active. Jeez, this keeps it fast. Just a broad overview, talking about our merit program. That is an acronym for Making Efficient, Responsible Investments in Transit. And it was actually implemented in 2019, which would be fiscal year 20. So this is our 7th year of using this prioritization process to develop our recommended funding scenarios. It is based on a prioritization using scores and performance-based criteria. And it has three main components. We offer operating assistance to our agency statewide. We also offer capital assistance to buy replace capital assets. And then we have a special programs that I'll talk about in a little bit that get some money out of the CMTF as well. So these revenues come from the Commonwealth Mass Transit Fund, as Ms. Owari was just speaking about. WMATA and VRE receive some other, I don't like to use the term carve-outs, but that's sort of what they are. So they're excluded from being scored and prioritized in the merit program. So to continue, just a little bit of an introduction. These are, geez, that thing is way too sensitive. Sorry, sir. Well, let's see. Okay, so, sorry. So just to give you a little more policy background on this, this methodology was developed in cooperation with our Transit Service Delivery Advisory Committee, which is a statutorily established to assist us in this program. And so, as you see there, it tries to balance the need for reliable annual funding while also using performance metrics so that we reward and incentivize better performance. And you see over there on my right side on the screen some of the performance metrics that we use. So that demonstrates how much service they're providing in some ways, how efficiently given cost and passengers. So that's just some of the, and so you see this year for operating assistance, we have $127.2 million that we're able to allocate through that program. Again, in operating, salaries, maintenance, fuel, which is, after all, about more than 70% of a transit agency's budget when it comes down to it. So operating is very important to our agencies. Let's learn more about it. We use what you would call a trend. We use trends when we look at the operating formula. So right now, the formula for 26 took data from fiscal years 21 through fiscal year 24 in the allocation this year. And another policy decision was made to cap the most operating assistance an agency could receive at 30% of their operating budget. So you couldn't have, a huge swing between who's getting their, a ton for maybe a smaller or larger agency is taking too much. So just to provide a little level playing field there. So that's operating assistance, which is one of our bigger programs. We also, as I said, part of the merit program is to provide capital assistance. As you see this year, we have over $90 million available in that program. This is an overall slide to show you really the three buckets that we put capital expenditures into. State of good repair is the most important. As you know, there's been a movement. We were just talking all about maintenance of highways, and there's been a movement at every level of transportation to put into what you have and to maintain that instead of building or purchasing new and letting that deteriorate. So as you see, we offer up to a 68% state match on a capital project for state of good repair or minor enhancements. And you also see what examples of those are. Again, the bulk of our capital program goes towards replacing revenue vehicles. I mean, that should be the most important thing that an agency is looking at, having those vehicles out on the road in good condition so they're safe, reliable, give a rider, passenger a good experience, give the operators the good experience as well. Some items where maybe we provide not just replacement of assets, but provide some expansion opportunities or other things aside from revenue vehicles, minor enhancements. And then some other ones fall into a major category that offers a little bit different match rate of 50%, as you see for major expansions. So that's overview of the capital assistance program. And then this is getting down to a little more detail about fiscal year 26. So you can see there, in state of good repair, we had over 300 assets that were sent, applied for replacement. We're not funding all of them, but we funded the bulk of them, as you can see there. So there was about $12 million that we did not fund that was applied for, and there's various reasons. Perhaps it was not eligible, it wasn't to its useful life yet, so we don't need to replace an asset that's still good. I mean, that's not part of the program as well. So we want them to be replaced at the right time when they need replacing and not spend money on assets that still have a useful life available. In the minor enhancements, you can see we had over $48 million of requests, but we're only recommending funding of $20 million of those. Again, some projects may be ineligible, maybe there was not the right time for them to be, or they have open grants for a similar project already, and so perhaps we didn't see why they would get funding for another one. So we make those types of decisions as we go through this as well, if there's a need or if they're ready for it. And then we don't get a whole lot of major expansion projects, but as you can see here, we recommend 2 projects this year for funding of major expansions. And so this is a high level, but we'll get into each of them in a second. So on to SCR, as you see, just a little bit more detail about that and what kind of projects do score in well and get funded. As we just showed, the bulk of them fund in because this is the main focus of the program, is to keep good assets out there and keep them replaced. A lot of revenue vehicles. So those that didn't score well, just it wasn't their time to be replaced. Perhaps they were applying too early for the asset. So that's state of good repair. Minor enhancements. Again, you can see kind of representative of what we received applications about. And some of these, again, we had 20 million that we were recommending funding, 28 not. So some of these may have been quite expensive that we ruled out for various reasons. Again, maybe they had an existing grant already. So you can see sometimes these are, onboard camera system was one example, for instance. So, that's minor enhancements, which is also, tries to just keep things in where the agency can be safe, be providing good service, be operating well. The major expansion projects, and we only had 2, so we're just sort of throwing those out there for you to see. Again, these are one of them is work on an existing facility. One of them is to replace a facility down in Suffolk. That's a small agency, urban agency down there. We have one in Northern Virginia though with Dash, with Alexandria Transit Company. So I mentioned the special programs really quickly. This is one that we get to do a little bit different from our other programs, and we can maybe try some innovative projects, or this is in code, and it says it's to do things like, ride sharing, transportation demand management, experimental transit, public transit promotion, things like that with these funds. So that's where we've broken it down into these couple of programs. One is it's actually at the bottom of the table here, the commuter assistance program. So some of the metropolitan urban areas, or small urban areas, we assist them in projects to do ride sharing, van pools, things like that. And so this is where that funding comes from. And so those stay pretty stable from year to year, and they've gotten really good at applying for projects. So normally these projects will almost all get funded. And then demonstration assistance. Again, somebody can do a pilot program. Sometimes it's a service, sometimes maybe a piece of technology. And so you can see that we still fund award a majority of those. Technical assist, a lot of things fall into that. Studies, maybe feasibility, maybe some kind of, again, maybe a study about a certain technology they want to maybe implement or look at. So that's something that might fall under technical assistance. Workforce development, that used to be called like an internship program, but again, now we want to make it to where maybe blue collar, it could be some more blue collar jobs, as well as white collar office jobs, things like that they can apply for these. So this is something where we can provide them some funding and match it to try to build up their workforce. This was so critical from the loss of workforce during COVID. Anything I know all of us could try to get our workforce back up is where we're seeing a really renewed interest in this program. So those are special programs. And then the transit ridership incentive program is still something that's it's a few years younger than the merit program overall. And it's, as you can see, it's intended to boost ridership in a number of ways. One is establishing service that may be regional in nature. There's a regional connectivity part there. And so, and we also fund some capital from it. You may see, because there's a part to regional connectivity about integrated fare, that maybe if somebody wasn't going to ride because, I have to connect and all that. So if you can make it as easy as possible for someone to get on the bus, and whether it be they're going right across the street or to another jurisdiction, if you can make it easy as possible for them to make that one seat ride and not have to be inconvenienced, they can take that trip. And so we've, you can see what we've recommended this year. And so there's a couple of regional connectivity projects. There's a BRT project in there. Passenger amenities is something where we fund shelters, again, trying to incentivize people to go out and have a nicer place to catch transit so that they're not being disincentivized to ride and use it. And then something that was the governor's priority in the past couple of years is the public safety and crime prevention projects. And they can do perhaps training programs, maybe some equipment on the bus to make it safer, things around shelters and things like that. So again, people are not avoiding transit because there's this perception that it's not safe. And so we can help provide assistance to make our transit environment as safe as possible so that it
Ms.
won't
Sellers?
drive people away.
Just on that public safety, and then on the previous one, you talked about enhancements. Have we seen any connection with like camera infrastructure and public safety / crime prevention? Have we seen projects that are kind of connected there?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I think, that certainly would be eligible. And I worked for a transit provider, and the police knew that, you could you could, a transit bus was around or something if they needed to maybe find out where something had happened. So it's always been a nice relationship there. So absolutely, those projects are very welcome in the program. We certainly have a few of those, yeah. Some of the onboard camera systems. They're getting more reliable all the time, too. All right, so that's our most of our merit program that goes to our local agencies. As we said, there is also a large portion, Virginia works with WMATA and the Northern Virginia jurisdictions to provide assistance to WMATA. That comes in several forms, which you see right there, 46.5%, and I believe this legislation is back from around the 2018 timeframe, 2019. 46.5% of the Commonwealth Mass Transit Fund, which you see is over $230 million in this next fiscal year, is allocated. It goes to NVTC, and they distribute it to WMATA as it's kind of a, they each give their portion of it as a match. So, and then also we work with Maryland and DC and other jurisdictions to match the PREA funding from the federal government. So the 3 jurisdictions put in $50 million apiece, and then the federal government puts in $150 million, and that's used to go to WMATA as well. And then there's a separate thing that's actually outside of the Commonwealth Mass Transit Fund and out of the merit program. It's just for capital, that $154.5 million. And that's also a partnership with DC and Maryland to provide a certain level up to $500 million, I believe, is what the total of that capital funding would be, with all combined. So again, WMATA is outside of our scoring and prioritization system, but in various ways we work with them to provide assistance with our Northern Virginia jurisdictions. And then VRE also in the Northern Virginia area, we have worked with them to kind of, again, supply that reliable funding. So they're at this point at 3.5% of the Commonwealth Mass Transit Fund in years that they are able to comply with some service delivery factors and some reporting that was put into the code and in CTV policy. And so you can see there some of those factors where we work with them to get information. Sometimes that data will be a couple years, that data is normally going to be a couple years old by the time it gets reported and certified. But we work with them on, seeing that ridership is at a good level, cost efficiency, so that we can, and also their reliability, that they're keeping their trains out, keeping their cars out there and providing service, because we don't want to be sinking money into things that aren't out there operating efficiently. So we do look at that. And just a basic thing, we ask them to submit their February 1st of each year in order to be in compliance with the CTB policy and to receive funding. And I believe that is all.
Thank you, Mr. Trogdon. Are there any questions? Ms. Sellers?
So a couple of months ago, there was a supply chain issue with bus delivery. Are we still seeing that, or have they received all the buses? I think it was in October, November.
Was that a particular,
In general.
Northern Virginia,
Yeah.
but they're in the monthly reports. We kept seeing there's a supply chain issue with the delivery of buses.
No, I think that's gotten better over time. Yeah, it's gotten better. Yeah, so no, I believe that's worked itself out. I mean, I don't know, we could talk about lately, there's only 2 bus manufacturers, heavy-duty bus manufacturers now that really work with the United States, and that's kind of a thing that's becoming a.
Heavy-duty meaning large.
Yeah, meaning the large ones. There's only one, I think there's only one for light-duty buses, so that's a concern as well, so. But no, that's steadily has worked its way out to where it's a little more predictable, but it was terrible after COVID, absolutely. You couldn't even get them to take an order sometimes, so, yeah, it's gotten better.
Anyone else?
Secretary.
Yes, Dr. Smoot.
The Commonwealth, if I'm following this, puts about $17 million a year into VRE. Is that essentially correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, Zach, what is the total operating and capital budget of VRE?
Gosh, I want to say it's like, is 80 million? I should know. Yeah, I think it's about 80, a little over 80 million.
Okay, so that difference comes in the form of fares and probably some local government appropriations?
Correct. They have also something, C-Rock, which I'm not terribly familiar, but that's I think a more regional tax up there. That's Commonwealth Rail, yeah, C-Rock, so I have to look that up. But there's somewhat of they get some money from I think a tax in Northern Virginia on other things, it also
Okay.
provides some.
Well,
funding.
with an $80 million in round number
Dr.
budget,
Smoot, it's about 120.
120, sorry.
120.
Capital and
Operating.
all right.
Operating's 120, capital's about another 80 million.
Okay.
All right, pardon me.
Now, the capital, 80 million, it strikes me that can't fund very much capital equipment. Am I correct or wrong about that?
The allocation they get from us? You mean our 80 million?
You mean their capital?
Their capital,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, one train car probably cost millions of dollars, would be my guess.
Yeah. That's why I think we had pursued a course of potentially getting them out of our main program and having them be more of one that we just worked with on a percentage basis so that our program would, if something like that came up in our regular program, it would take a large majority. So that's why we worked with them to get it to where they would just get an allocation and we wouldn't have to perhaps be subject to.
Chairman, the VRE does have its own separate board, and the NVTA or NVTC, whatever the acronym is, and PRTC both feed into that. And if I remember correctly from my time on it, they receive a lot of federal funding.
Yeah, that's correct.
A lot. They are highly federally subsidized.
Right.
Mr. Secretary.
Director.
Thank you. You're right, Ms. Sellers. The NVTC and PRTC jointly own and operate and manage the VRE, and I sit on both of those boards as well, so we review all of the updates from VRE very regularly. I was going to give this update a little bit later, but these performance metrics kind of since the CTB policy came out in 2023 to provide this carve-out for VRE are very intensive, and so our department has joint meetings and goes through and looks at all of this and works with the Office of the Attorney General to ensure that they are in compliance with policy. We have some good hot off the press news about the VRE in that their March ridership numbers are up year over year 70% from March 24. Recently, the last month or two have been really, really good news
I wonder why that
stories.
is.
A lot of people going back to work.
Oh,
so-
somebody had to go back to the office. That's what happened.
But Dr. Smith, did that answer your question? You were
Yes,
just,
thank you for that.
about, that's kind of why we wanted to pursue, because it could be, a big shot to our capital program.
Yeah, we shouldn't say, we're often say people had to go back to work. That's not accurate. People were in theory working, right? But they had to go back to their office. And that is what this whole line was about. And when people quit going to the office, they didn't have a need to go on the line. And so what VRE had done over time, and I think they will continue to do, hopefully, is to meet their market. And part of that is the night and weekend thing, and, there are people that there's a fair amount of demand for night and weekends. And so how they sort of meet that as the daily rebounds in terms of their budgets and how they make that work will be, I'm sure, something they'll be focusing on going forward. Thank you, Mr. Trogdon. Anybody else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Emily Stock. Welcome, Emily. Let's talk about rail.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing well, thank you. Good morning, members of the board. I'm here to talk about DRPT's draft rail SIP, which starts with the rail plan. This is a statewide rail plan that DRPT develops every 4 years per Federal Railroad Administration guidance. Each rail plan takes a snapshot of our program and assesses it against VTRAN's vision and goals. And DRPT will begin our next rail planning process later this year, and we'll be looking forward to briefing the board and getting feedback at that time. Completing projects in the SIP is how we achieve the goals, and we realize the benefits outlined in the rail plan. Our SIP is organized by fund, the Rail Preservation and Commonwealth Rail Fund is what you see on the screen here. The bulk of our funding in rail goes toward rail preservation grants and grants through the freight program, which I'll describe in the next few slides. We also devote funding to rail planning for the rail plan itself and to assist partners to secure federal grants for rail projects to improve rail crossings, for example, and for long-range planning through the FRA's Corridor Development Program. Not as sensitive as it was with Zach. There we go. This is our application evaluation process. The majority of the rail program, of course, is devoted to grants to railroads. Grant applications are due every February 1st, and this slide shows the evaluation process used for the rail preservation and freight applications that we get every year. It's similar to the process described for transit projects and similar to Smart Scale. First, we verify that a project is eligible for a program. Then we look at application data to score projects. We normalize and rank projects so that we can compare and prioritize among projects of varied scope and scale. And this process results in a fiscally constrained recommendation. Next, I'll again get into fund-specific information. The first is our rail preservation program. The purpose of that is to keep short line railroads in a state of good repair throughout the state. So over the past 3 years, this program has done just that, keeping over 2,000 miles of track up to standard for Virginia's transportation network. The fund is devoted strictly to short line railroads, which provide last mile rail service to Virginia industries that aren't served by Class I railroads like Norfolk Southern or CSX, and there are 9 short lines throughout the Commonwealth. And applications are screened. Of course, they must be short line railroads to screen in, and projects must raise or maintain track to what FRA defines as Class II standard, which supports 286,000 pounds of capacity on bridges at a minimum. Applicants are also required to match the grant request by at least 30%. And we've recommended a number of projects for this program for FY26. The first 2 projects to recommend for rail preservation are for bridge projects for the Norfolk-Portsmouth Beltline, which is located partly in Chesapeake and partly in Portsmouth. The first one is to replace cables and repair other elements of a lift bridge that crosses the Elizabeth River. The second is for programmatic system upgrades to ties, rail, and other related infrastructure, including bridges. DRPT is also recommending a grant to the Shenandoah Valley Railroad for bridge repair and upgrades in Stanton, specifically to replace stringers covering both sides of the Shenandoah Valley Railroad's Bridge 135 to repair both abutments and furnishings, install new back walls and wing walls on both approaches. And we also have projects that we're recommending that fall into the resurfacing category. And that typically means improving the track bed and ballast and drainage system under the tracks, replacing rail ties, and also in some cases replacing the tracks themselves. We are recommending a project to fund Buckingham Branch's Virginia Southern Track Improvements. This is a project that spans 58 miles through Charlotte, Lunenburg, Mecklenburg, Nottoway, and Prince Edward counties. We are also recommending a track bed and tie replacement project for the Shenandoah Valley Railroad in Augusta County, and that will replace 2,500 ties along with main line and switches for that railroad. Moving along to the freight program. This is, even though it's not required, the average match, the average private match coming from railroads and our grant partners for this program is close to half of the project costs that we see. And the beauty of these capital improvements, this is a capital improvement program to increase network capacity. The beauty of this program is that there's no Commonwealth responsibility for maintenance. So we don't have to maintain them through Commonwealth funds, which is a big plus.
We like
Okay, so the freight program eligibility screening, projects must meet at least one of the statewide rail plan goals, which are based on VTrans goals. Projects must expand the railroad network by increasing rail carload throughput through a physical capacity expansion or improved operational capacity. We also require 30% design engineering plans to be completed at the time of application submittal. And as DJ Stadler from BPRA and the Secretary emphasized in the first presentation, that helps us to make sure that projects are ready to advance. And for projects that aren't quite ready, we do have a study track as well for companies to apply for. So this year, we are recommending two projects. First is the Shenandoah Valley Railroad's Pleasant Valley Yard Capacity Project in Rockingham County. And this is a good example of leveraging the full capability of the freight program. The Shenandoah Valley Railroad applied and received a freight funding for a study in years past. They did a study to determine the design for the Pleasant Valley Yard, and now they're actually going out to build it. The project will construct a ladder track yard at the Pleasant Valley location to accommodate expected growth in rail traffic traveling to and from Norfolk Southern. And this area is getting very congested, and the railroad needs to be ready for growth at this location, which also supports Interchange's cold storage facility there. And the Shenandoah Valley Railroad carries mostly agricultural products, corn, soybean products, and salt for VDOT operations as well. The second freight project that we're recommending is the Potts Valley Branch Improvements Project in Giles County. This is a Norfolk Southern project to improve multiple bridges to 286,000 pound capacity to serve an industry, the lowest facility. It's a stone facility near Parisburg, Virginia. And this is a dashboard of the applications that we got. We're zooming out here to the projects and applications that are distributed throughout the state. The total rail carloads estimated for the applications that we received this year total 220,000 rail carloads. And there is more demand for the rail preservation program, as you see, over 3/4 of the total that was applied for. And the next slide gives us a summary of what we are recommending. This is a breakdown for FY '26. So you see a combination of new projects to the program and previously approved projects in the darker blue. We're able to close projects from previous years that came in below budget and ended up being able to accept most of the applications that we received this year, which was wonderful. And we were able to accept at least one application from each one of the railroads that applied. And the balance that we're not using will be applied for future years. And that ends the rail portion of the presentation. I'll turn things back over to our CFO, Deanna Ori. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emily. Appreciate it. Deanna, welcome back.
Just a few quick slides on our agency budget for fiscal '26. So the budgeted amounts represent our anticipated expenditures for the next fiscal year, and this is on all projects and all grants. So even those grants that we have awarded in prior years, if we intend to pay an invoice or something like that, then that is reflected in the budget numbers that I'm previewing this morning. In fiscal '26, we plan on investing over $1.26 billion in state, federal, and local resources for rail and public transportation projects. That's about a $52.4 million increase over the prior year or the current fiscal year, fiscal '25. I'll talk about, on the next slide, you'll see in the subsequent slides, the 3.7% for the DRPT admin budget. That's a little less than $20 million, less than a 1% growth over the current fiscal year. And then the VPRA amount, which you'll see on the next slide as well, which we again pass through to VPRA, is about 192 million. And so this is what the numbers look like for the 26 budget. The total amount, like I mentioned, is 1.26 billion. Transit, you can see the numbers right there. The next slide, I just want to highlight really quickly for our admin budget. We're requesting 19.9 million. The Appropriations Act allows for DRPT to use up to 5% from revenue from the Commonwealth Mass Transit Fund, the Short Line Rail Preservation Fund, and the Commonwealth Rail Fund for our operations. The way that the 19.9 million breaks out is about 55% of that is for personnel costs. Another 27% is for our consulting services, and those are things like engineering support, compliance review support, and any other studies and assessments that we are conducting over the next fiscal year. We have contractual obligations that represent about 1.8 million or 9% of the budget, and that's for our rent spaces, for the office space that we have in Richmond, and also the Nova office space that we occupy, and also some attorney expenses that we have with the for our agency. And then we've got about 5% for IT-related hardware and software costs, and then a little bit more for other expenses like supplies and materials and that sort of thing. My final slide here is just about next steps and what we'll be doing over the next few months between now and when we come back in June. We plan on participating with VDOT and the Secretary in about 9 regional public hearings throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. From those meetings and from additional review internally and other feedback that we'll receive, we will then update the SIP and present the final SIP to this board again in June on the 17th. We will be finalizing the 5-year capital budget process also for projects that are not funded in the current SIP. And as I believe Zach mentioned, not only do we have the SIP in the binder, but we also have it on our website in a portal that's easily, or that you're able to look up the projects more easily by district and do a number of other features and sorts through the portal. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. O'Leary. Appreciate it very much. Let me say a couple things. We'll take some questions. But on slide 38, you know, we've given you 2 points of information. One was that while they're allowed 5%, we're decreasing that percentage used from 3.9 last year to 3.7 this year. But frankly, I'm more interested in the next line. And the reason I say that is that if I just had higher cost operating assistance things, I'm not sure it takes more work to do it just because the number's higher, right? And so when I look at the administrative budget, and we're up less than 1% in a year where we've witnessed what we witnessed in all these other places that we're talking about, I focus more in on that and driving that number down. Percent will be where the percent sort of is based on the revenues that come in at the top. But we've, I think the director and her staff have worked hard to make sure we're delivering these things efficiently from a administrative perspective, and I salute you for that. Thank you. Perfect. Guess what time it is? It's lunchtime. We're going to break for lunch. We'll be back in 40 minutes. We'll call this meeting back into order. The next item on the agenda is item number 7, the VDOT Draft 2026 to 2031 Six-Year Improvement Program. Ms. Pryor, welcome back.
Thank you. Today I'm going to brief you on the FY '26 to 2031 Draft Six-Year Improvement Program. The combined highways and rail and public transportation program is valued at $25.8 billion. The highway construction portion of that is $18.8 billion. This is about $500 million less than the FY '25 program that you adopted last year. That's in large part to a significant amount of funding from NVTA and HR TAC dropping out of the six-year window. As the tunnel project advances, there's less funding in the six-year window for it. And so that's the main
Everybody understand
reason.
that? So these big projects that we're administering for localities, in this case, the two that she mentioned, they become part of our budget, and then we send that money back out. And so as those projects come off, it's not our regular work, if you will, it's our special work. Right, good.
In addition, the program also includes about $763 million in debt service, provides funding to 4,500 projects, and the draft program also includes funding provided by others to the tune of about $2.7 billion. Just some highlights that impact the development of the draft, as Ms. Farmer presented back in January as part of the draft six-year financial plan. The revenue figures provided for the program update include assumptions for the planning and operational needs of the tunnel expansion, as well as an infusion of ongoing maintenance or ongoing support for maintenance needs and financial assistance to localities across the six-year window. In addition, we've included $300 million in Garvey bonds. That's $100 million in each fiscal year, 27, 29, and 31. We've also applied or incorporated the estimated debt service for those Garvey bonds. In terms of specific program impacts, revenue sharing is back across the six-year window at $100 million is the state share each year. The Innovation and Technology Transportation Fund is funded to the maximum amount permitted at $25 million per year. Same thing with the Unpaved Roads Program. It's funded to the maximum of $25 million a year. This draft program incorporates the staff-recommended Smart Scale Round 6 scenario that you were briefed on earlier this year. In addition, as presented by Ms. Farmer earlier, the passage of Senate Bill 1082 authorizing the issuance of special structures revenue bonds has been incorporated. And then finally, the state of good repair funding distribution percentages have been updated this year to reflect the eligibility of CUSP structures. If you recall, last year legislation was passed that expanded the eligibility for that program to not only structurally deficient bridges, but also CUSP structures. And so that impacts the needs distribution slightly. In terms of impacts to the major construction programs, you can see not significant differences across the six-year window. This slide shows the annual programs and the six-year amounts for state of good repair, safety, special structures, unpaved roads, ITTF, as well as the MPO allocated funds from the Regional Surface Transportation Program and CMAQ. Continuing on with those major programs, of particular interest this year, of course, is the Highway Construction District Grant Program and the High Priority Projects Program, valued at $2.2 billion and $1.4 billion respectively. That is supporting Smart Scale Round 6 additions to the program. In addition, the Interstate Operations Enhancement Program is about $1.9 billion. The revenue sharing, as I mentioned earlier, at $100 million a year for $600 million. And then the TAP program at about $228 million. I'll get into a little bit of detail about the individual programs and the new projects being selected. For the State of Good Repair Bridge Program, we have about $527 million available. That's funding from previous fiscal years through year 5 of the six-year program. Similarly, for local bridges, we have about 185 million available. From that, we've incorporated 33 projects totaling $297 million. So I know you're asking why we didn't fully allocate all of the available funds. There's a couple of reasons. One, the majority of that funding is in the outer years of the program, FY '28 and later. And so there's no need to identify projects to add when they can't start for 3 years, potentially. And so we're going to hold off and allocate that within probably next year's program to avoid any potential changes in priorities or anything. So we're just holding off on that. There's also a few districts that have pretty significant pending cost increases on some SGR bridges that we need to sort out before we allocate those funds to new projects. For SGR paving, last year, as part of the department's increase in paving work, we allocated FY '26 funding for SGR VDOT paving projects. So we're just focused on local paving this year. We had $43 million available. We've allocated that to 47 projects for $23.5 million. The majority of the unallocated balance is in the Hampton Roads District. If you recall, last year when we updated the state of good repair policy, I brought to your attention an issue where our SGR local paving is capped at 1.5 million per locality. And in some instances, the revenues available in a district exceed what could potentially be allocated based on that cap. And that's happened again this year in Hampton Roads. We will probably look to do a subsequent round to get some of that money out on the street and put to work. For new safety projects, we had $70 million available for local systemic improvements as well as some VDOT projects. We allocated that money to 34 projects valued at almost $68 million. You've seen this before. This is just a summary of the Smart Scale Round 6 staff recommended scenario. The available funding shown on the left from district grant and high priority funds. The staff recommended scenario identifies 53 projects for $984 million. And then finally, the ITTF program, we had about $50 million available. We've allocated it to these 6 projects, mostly district-wide and statewide initiatives valued at $47 million. Finally, in terms of next steps, we'll be hitting the road, coming to each district to hold spring meetings to get feedback on the draft program, including Smart Scale Round 6 staff recommended scenario. All of that feedback will be provided. You'll come back in May and adopt a consensus scenario for Smart Scale Round 6, which we'll incorporate into the final program. We'll also make any adjustments based on the approved budget, and we'll bring to you a recommendation for a final FY '26 to 2031 6-year improvement program for your adoption in June. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Pryor. Appreciate you. Next item on the agenda is to bring back Ms. Maxwell and finish up our General Assembly session overview. Ms. Maxwell.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, it's nice to be back.
Thank you for letting us bring you forward and interrupt you.
All right. All right, members of the board, Mr. Chair, to continue, I'm going through VDOT's agency bills that were enacted this year by the 2025 session, General Assembly, and the governor. The next item is a very technical bill that basically brings Virginia's state plane coordinate system up to current times. That the coordinate system that's currently cited in the code was last updated in 1983. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is updating their systems and their standards. And once they do that, this legislation will authorize ODU to notify the Code Commission that the standards have been updated, and this bill will then go into effect in Virginia. The next item is SB 1340, also signed by the governor. I call that just the VDOT Reporting Efficiencies Bill. It just simply allows VDOT to eliminate a couple of reports that, one has become obsolete, the other is in essence a redundant reporting requirement, and there's just no need for the agency to continue reporting on those items. The next bills I've categorized as bills that are impacting highways or rights-of-way. First two bills on this slide are bills dealing with eminent domain. Both of the bills one bill was signed by the governor. The other bill, the governor offered an amendment that's been approved by the General Assembly. Both bills address eminent domain issues. Probably the more encompassing bill is SB 1158, which makes some changes to eminent domain procedures, certain time periods that are involved, how interest is calculated, et cetera. Both bills would basically impact one area of eminent domain, which deals with the documentation that an owner or landowner whose property is being acquired may be entitled to receive. Because of the broader scope of SB 1158, the governor proposed an amendment to that bill that in essence will provide VPRA, Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, more time to comply, all entities, but more time to comply with one aspect of that bill, and that was primarily because of the potential impacts, negative impacts on VPRA. We also had a couple of naming bills. These are commemorative naming bills, very similar to what the CTB passes or acts upon on occasion. The first one was to name a bridge on 264 for Captain Chevarati. Apologies. This was a captain who was very well known in the Virginia Beach area, who's a firefighter. He died of a very aggressive form of cancer. The next bill is the Hunter Reedy Memorial Bridge. This is going to be named after a deputy who was killed in the line of duty. He was shot and killed while on a traffic stop. The next bill is a bill involving license plate readers. This was a very intensively negotiated bill during the session. Right now, the governor had proposed amendments to the bill, and the General Assembly rejected those amendments. So now the bill has gone back to the governor, and at this point in the process, the governor has two options. One option would be to sign the bill. The other option would be to veto the bill. So he no longer has the ability to amend the bill. Bottom line, the license plate readers, some time ago, the Attorney General's office issued a decision or opinion advising that the Commonwealth Transportation Board, VDOT, could not issue land use permits for license plate readers. They could not issue those for right-of-way. This bill would basically put into law, or attempted to put into law, the authority for those permits to be issued, but it also put numerous guardrails and protections around these systems. They're currently being used in localities and other jurisdictions that have control over their own rights-of-way. The governor's amendments, since they were rejected, where we are now is there is a reenactment requirement that in order for anyone to put these devices on VDOT right-of-way, there will have to be another session and language passed actually authorizing placement of these devices on VDOT right-of-way.
Yeah, Ms. Maxwell, let's take the bills that have not been acted upon yet and just give a short brief and move on.
Okay. All right. So that is the status of that bill. The Regional Highway Program, that is a bill that was vetoed by the governor. That was a bill that would have implemented or enacted two new programs, highway programs, to be administered by HR TAC. The programs, one would have involved a program for interstate highways. The other would have involved a program for coastal resilience funding, a program and funding. There was no funding provided under the bill. The governor vetoed the bill because of various issues he saw were presented by the bill. He was much more eloquent than I, but bottom line, he felt like there were certain ambiguities associated with the program and
It also
jurisdiction.
it also set up programs without funding. which is sort of the camel's nose, if you will. And so I think that was troubling.
And that was a concern the governor raised. It would potentially divert resources. The next several bills involved highway safety law enforcement. First bill, HB 2475, signed by the governor, requires all occupants, adult passengers in a vehicle to wear seatbelts. The bill did not change the offense to a primary offense. HB 2074, portable changeable.
Everybody hear that? So now, all adults in the car are required to wear seatbelts, but it's not primary. So you can't be stopped for that. But you could be cited for that if you were stopped for another reason. Okay?
HB 2074 would allow certain entities, particularly involved in towing and those types of activities on the highway, a great example is AAA, would allow them to display changeable message signs on their vehicles once they are stopped to advise traffic to move over. That's very much a safety-oriented bill. HB 2096 is a new program that will be implemented in Virginia. It's the Intelligent Speed Assistance Program. Basically, if a court convicts someone, a driver, of certain speed offenses, the court can, as an alternative to suspending their driver's license, allow them to enter into or enroll in one of this program conducted by VASAP, and it would basically require implementation or installation on their vehicle, a device that would not permit them or not allow the vehicle to exceed the speed limit.
Governor, it governs your speed.
HB 2718.
But it was for excessive. The people that would be impacted from this, you might make the case that they shouldn't be driving at all, but this was sort of an interim way to keep them not from doing that when they were otherwise driving okay.
HB 2718 was rather technical bill that just merely required for those photo speed devices or systems that are in school zones to basically, the photo that was submitted with the summons had to clearly show that the
video.
school zone was active. So this light had to be shown as blinking, et cetera.
You have speed monitoring devices in school and work zones, and you have some criteria that you got to have, like posted signs. And so if you're going to enforce that, you got to, the photo evidence has to include that the sign was there and working properly, or that the signs that they, fold over when they're not in use and unfold when they are in use was unfolded properly so that you know that the offense really occurred.
And then SB 1233 was another bill that dealt with photo speed enforcement. The bill also, though, besides putting some guardrails on photo speed enforcement, it added 2 new systems that could be installed on highways. One would have been a system to monitor stop sign compliance. The other would have been a system to monitor pedestrian violations in pedestrian areas. So, for instance, if a pedestrian crossing was involved, if a driver violated the pedestrian crossing, proceeded through or crossed a pedestrian crossing when there was a pedestrian in the crossing, that could have been detected. The governor vetoed the bill primarily because these 2 new systems are relatively new and they're not yet fully tested or proven. So now we're at the point of key studies. One key study is HB 2627. That is a study that Secretary of Transportation has been directed to lead along with, or in consultation with the Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security. That study the Secretary is to convene a work group that is to consist of members of VDOT, DMV, VSP, then 5 members of the House, 3 members of the Senate, and then other stakeholders the Secretary deems appropriate. The purpose of the study is to examine the technical, operational, and legal issues associated with operation of automated vehicles, and the work groups to to finish its work by September 1, and then a report is due to the General Assembly by November 1. The next bill, HB 2724, again, this is a bill that the governor's amendment was not accepted, and so that bill is still under consideration by the governor, but there was basically a reporting aspect under that bill. SJ 263 is a bill that would require VDOT to study the need and options for constructing a bridge from Surrey County to either James City County or Charles City County. It is due at the start of the 2027 session. And finally, HB 1615, this was a bill that would have required VDOT to look at programs or processes for considering certain requests for sound walls that were not associated with a project, but rather if citizens had concerns about the noise levels in their neighborhoods, or their residences, for instance, it would have allowed them to make requests to VDOT, and VDOT consider those requests. The bill was passed by with a letter, and that's action that's actually taken by the General Assembly. And basically, the letter, which was issued by the chairman of House Transportation, has just asked VDOT to study the issues surrounding the request for retrofit sound walls that aren't associated with the project. Today, sound walls are implemented and installed in association with projects that basically increase highway capacity. We have a couple of budget items. There's an amendment in the budget to adjust or make adjustments to the supplemental toll relief program. There's also an item that will eliminate tolls on the Coleman Bridge. That says January 1, 2026. Actually, the language is by January 1, 2026. And also it makes provisions for forgiveness for payback of TIFRA funds. And then finally, the last item requires VDOT and DRPT to look at ways to minimize or eliminate, when practical and when not in conflict with agreements or the law, tolling for transit vehicles. So that item is still in the budget. On the budget, the issue of the budget, the governor still has items that and he can consider for purposes of veto, so we don't know yet what the status of that last item would be. All right, and then the next, are there any questions? The next item, I'm going to go ahead and proceed with the DRPT language. I've got Andy here with me as well, in case there are questions, but as we noted in the prior slide, VDOT reviewed a number of bills. DRPT reviewed 121 bills this past session. Two of the bills that have been passed or signed by the governor are HB 1603 and 1144. That basically changes the cap on the funding that DRPT can transfer to short line rail from the Commonwealth Rail Fund. The effect of that is, right now, the law reads $4 million, or that's the amount that can be transferred. Now it's up to 50%, and based on current levels of funding, it amounts to about a total of $6 million.
So the fund kept going up, but the piece that could be transferred stayed static. So we just sort of married them up.
The next two bills deal with surplus lines brokers. These are insurance brokers that provide insurance, very specialized insurance that may not be necessarily or able to be provided by typical insurers. That bill exempts those insurers from premium taxes. And so it's a benefit primarily to VRE, who has to procure that type of insurance. And then SB 1317 expands the authority of transportation district commissions to enter into contracts and agreements with nearby localities, transportation district, planning district commissions, et cetera. There was actually, I believe it was the PRTC already had that authority in the budget, and this just codifies it for all.
Called regionalism.
Right. It codifies it for all TDCs. As far as budget amendments for DRPT, the first item basically addressed funding for WMATA and moved virtually all of the funding for the next 2 years into the first year of the budget, and then ended up reducing the total amount that would be paid to WMATA by, or allocated to WMATA by about $7.8 million. The next item would have provided a one-time general fund investment to Hampton Roads Transit. That, because the governor has not taken item on the or action on the budget yet, we don't know what the status of that would be. Then finally, the last item is the same item I mentioned with regard to VDOT, where VDOT and DRPT are to look at mitigating tolls for transit.
Let me just, any questions on that? Let me make a couple comments. Thank you, Ms. Maxwell. The WMATA situation is really difficult. WMATA is very important to Northern Virginia and thus to the Commonwealth. You see what VRE has done in terms of, you heard earlier what they've done in terms of their rebound in ridership, which I pretty much believe is 100% because of back to the office. At the end of the day, WMATA's cost continues to rise very fast. And some of it is labor contracts and some of it is something else. There's all sorts of impacts on there. But it has, in essence, it has an insatiable appetite for money. And it is very important. We need to figure it out. It's a difficult beast to figure out because we don't have control of it. And there's so many hands of control in it, that, and most of the work that's been done or pursued by the General Assembly and by WMATA has been, find me more money. That's the answer. Find me more money. And what we've tried to tell WMATA from this governor's perspective, but he's not been alone, is there's not a lot more money, folks. You're going to have to figure out how to live within your means. And at the end of the day, as I said, this is a sort of a difficult problem. I know that the staff at WMATA is working really hard to try to solve it, but there's got to be some fundamental changes, or this will just continue to go, and we just don't have the money to fund it. It's going to start eroding the other things that we do. But it's not just about Virginia. So Northern Virginia provides a lot of funding from their region. The district provides funding. Maryland provides funding. And there's all sorts of puts and takes, if you will, on how that all works in each place. But I'm here to tell you that Maryland doesn't have any money for this. They don't have excess money for this. They're not going to have excess money for this. And the district's in the same boat. If you look at their financial situation, there's not a big pot of money there waiting to go somewhere. And the federal government hasn't been willing to do that. They do capital, but they haven't done the other piece. And so we've got a couple groups that are working, one in the General Assembly, one up in Northern Virginia or in the DC metro area. But pretty much all they're doing is looking for new taxes. You know, that's what they're doing. And I just don't see that happening across the makeup of WMATA. I don't think that's going to happen in Maryland. I don't think it's going to happen in Washington, D.C. And, you know, I can't speak to what will happen when this governor's gone, but it's a difficult problem, and we need to find a solution. So what we've encouraged them to do, and with some success, is find ways to get more efficient, to cut costs, to reduce some service. And I say some success, there has been some success. But we continue to look for ways to improve, which creates spending money that we weren't spending before. in order to attract ridership to justify, sort of the expense. And I think we need to figure out a solution that doesn't rely on that. And so we've been very sort of strong on no new service, no new amenities, no new. Let's get what we have straight as we can get it. Let's focus on that. At this point, it's not for me about how good a system it can be. It's about solvency, at the end of the day. And so it's a tough problem. There's lots of people working on it. But I will tell you, if we just throw more money at it, that's what's going to continue to happen. It just has an insatiable appetite. So it's concerning. And, if it wasn't valuable, it wouldn't be a problem. But it's really valuable. It's necessary. It's has a huge impact on Northern Virginia's economy and their citizenry. We've just got to find a way. And there's overlap. There's, the bus service overlaps. There's all sorts of debate up in Northern Virginia about this stuff. But at the end of the day, we can't just continue to grow a system that can't pay its bills. It's not sustainable. So I don't know what the money's going to come from. I talked to my colleagues in Maryland and D.C., particularly Maryland, and they're very clear. And Maryland's a blue state. It's blue, right? No money, none. Not going to happen. So, and we all sort of pitch in together, right? And if you don't pitch in, I don't pitch in, and they don't pitch in, and that's how it works. So it's going to be a tough struggle here. It's not going to get fixed. We were able to get them focused on some cost reductions, some planning that we seeded some money into to help them hire some folks to come look at some stuff. And I just have to tell you from my experience in this government, there's still money to be found. There's still expense to be reduced or eliminated. We just got to be aggressive about it. At the same time, they're trying to be modern and be good, and that's a classic struggle. So this will continue for some time. I don't think it's going to get resolved in the current. It's going to take some time because, frankly, it doesn't really matter how valuable they are. Maryland and Washington just don't have the cash. And so Virginia happens to be unique in that group where we are pretty strong financially, as strong as we've ever been. And I think we'll continue to look to ways to make us even stronger as we don't know what the future holds, right? And so this governor has made sure that he's that he's going to strengthen our balance sheet, continue to strengthen our balance sheet so that we can weather the storms ahead. And we're not going to find ourselves in a position like some of our other colleagues who are just struggling to pay the bills every day. We're not in that position in Virginia writ large, and so that's a good situation. But stay tuned. Alma Mater will continue to work hard to make it the best it can be, and it's going to take some hard work and a lot of time.
Mr. Secretary,
Dr. Smoot.
Speaking as someone who lives, over 200 miles from Amata, it does seem to me, as you said, that it is very important to the entire Commonwealth. It's also important to the United States of America. We can't have a third world mass transit system for people coming to the capital of the United States. There's a story that was in the media I read over the weekend about what is happening to the Philadelphia system. It is not a pretty story, but I think it is relevant to the situation that we're facing. Philadelphia is eliminating entire lines, rail lines, bus lines. They were forecasting a deficit of about 50% of the annual budget, which is 400 and some million dollars. And they came to the same conclusion that you shared with us, that there just was no more money in the sense of appropriation, and the state of Pennsylvania didn't come to the party to address that. So they are reducing service across that entire footprint by 50%, gone. And I don't think that's where we want to be, but this is a real concern, I think, to the entire Commonwealth.
It absolutely is. Yes, Ms. Numel.
Just a question, Mr. Secretary, if I could, on this budget item. It strikes me that, I know we're waiting for the governor's decision, but it strikes me that if we give these WMATA all the money in the first year of a 2-year cycle, even though you're reducing the total amount, they'll be back. They'll be back after they spend it all to get another tranche. And were there strings on this, giving them the whole tranche in the first year of the 2-year cycle? I mean, what was the General Assembly thinking about this?
You'd have to ask the General Assembly that, ma'am. Listen, this has been one of the problems here is that this administration wanted to give them exactly the right number that was called for in sort of in the negotiation. Exactly our percent, right? No more, no less. In the way that we fund the operating, it goes to a third party who also helps fund it, called Northern Virginia. So the counties in the places up in Northern Virginia help fund this in a meaningful way, in a big way. And we help them fund it. So we give the money to them, and then they give it to WMATA. Well, as WMATA's budget fluctuates, and as the split between the three entities fluctuates, and it does, then the amount that we owe changes, right? And we don't want to give the Northern Virginia people more money than they need, and we don't want to give them less than they need. We want to give them what they are required to have. And so as the budget was changing over time, and all sorts of moving parts between the entities, Washington and Maryland and Virginia, in terms of what their share is and thus what their number is, we were, pretty focused on getting the right number. And it's a moving target, and we're not really at the right number, I don't believe. But at some point, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, and we're close enough, okay? So this has been an ongoing negotiation between, Maryland, Virginia, WMATA, DC, Northern Virginia, and the governor's office. And it's complicated, because nobody wants to kill the thing. But we just need some fiscal discipline. And one of the frustrating things that we have seen and others have seen is during this I'll call it a financial crisis, because it is, during this time, most of us that are trying to help ensure that the thing stays alive are not looking for expansion. We're not looking for increases in amenities, and we're not looking for things like that. No, 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 and no. And yet, those creep in as well. Because at the end of the day, their vision is, I want to serve these people to do these things. And our vision is, we have so much money, and that's all we have, and you've got to live to learn you've got to learn to live with that. So we have a sort of conflicting goals, and it's not that they're not trying to be fiscally responsible. I'm not saying that, but they just have a different view. And so, listen, of course it'd be better if it went more places. Of course it'd be better if it cost less money. Of course it'd be better if the trains were nicer. Of course. But you got to live with what you have at some level. And I don't want to see what Dr. Smoot's talking about, but I'll tell you this. There probably is opportunity for some of that. You know, I mean, we've talked in here before, and I don't have the data. We've talked about collecting the data. But, you know, if we're riding buses around the Commonwealth that have an average of 6 or 8 people on them, and it's a 55-passenger bus, you know, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. Now, how do we get those things in alignment? Because listen, those 6 or 8 passengers are important. They got to get to where they need to get to, and they don't have a lot of options, and I understand all that, right? But how can I get them there better, cheaper, more efficiently? And I think we get locked into our ways of thinking and our programs as we do these things, and sometimes we don't push enough on that. And, we'll continue to push on that, and I think we'll see some more over the next 9 months. But nobody wants to just take away all these things and not have anybody be able to get anywhere. Nobody wants that. We just want it to be efficient and to be affordable. Pardon me. And so it's tough. It's a struggle. But, you know, we will get there eventually. Yes, Ms. Sellers.
So WMATA gets a percentage based on code. Have we looked at historically how many times they've come back and asked for more money?
We looked at everything, Ms. Sellers. Yes.
And really put it on paper and showed it to the General Assembly and, you know, seen
General
it
Assembly's the
graph.
one asking for the money.
Right. And I mean, maybe it's time we put something down on paper in
We've
a
done all that, Ms.
presentation
Sellers. We have.
and say, every year they come back and ask for more money.
I've talked about that in Washington and here and Maryland and everywhere else.
But it's a little different when it's on paper, sir.
Been on paper. That's what I'm saying. It's presentation after presentation after presentation. We have it. I'd be happy to give it to you. We've been through it in here as well. We've seen the numbers. We've brought them into this meeting a numbers of times in the last couple of years. And we can bring them back. But that's, you know, at the end of the day, that's the problem. And some of these things are, you know, the capital money thing is fixed. So over time, that changes. Some of the capital money components are fixed. And over time, the value of that changes, and so it puts pressure on them. So listen, there are a lot of people that are well-intentioned, that are smart, that are working on it, but they're competing goals. You know, some people think we should have more transit and it should be free, and other people say we need to live within these parameters, and that's what we fight over at the end of the day. So it's not going to get solved in the next few months. This is a problem that's going to go on for some years till it gets resolved. But at the end of the day, if there's no money, they can't run it. They're going to have to find a way, like Philadelphia has, to live within their means, and then you go from there.
Follow up,
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Secretary. If the governor would veto this piece of legislation with respect to the budget, would it go back to the 2-year allocation, or would the money go away? This budget amendment? Because that really would put him between a rock and a hard place.
I'm not going to speak to what the governor may or may not do, but, or what he is allowed to do or not do under the rules. But if you're asking me, would he remove all the funding from WMATA if he could? I don't think that, I'm not sure that would make a lot of sense. The answer is no, he wouldn't do that. We want it right, right? We want it right. And right means affordable, safe, and live within your means. And that's what we want. Yes, sir, Mr. Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Just as a question, it seems like the differences of opinion and philosophy are creating some of the problem. We have the purse, or the state has the purse in Maryland and District and Northern Virginia. Is there any meeting of the minds to reset their thinking, get them in line with how we're thinking?
What I tried to be clear is that my view is that that Maryland and D.C. are not going to find lots of money to increase Ramada's budget. And if they don't, we won't, because that's sort of how it works. So I just don't see that, because they don't have a good avenue to get there. Virginia could afford to give money to other programs if it needed to, but they can't, and we don't think we should anyway. But there, listen, there are people on of any issue on the extremes. And there's some people that would say, we shouldn't put one more dollar into building one more road in the Commonwealth. There are people that believe that, right? So you got those people, and then you got people that want to build more roads, and they don't want to have any transit. And everybody's in between, and everybody in between. So there's a lot of sentiment, and I understand it. Listen, Northern Virginia is a congested, difficult place. We're working on that every day. There's nowhere else in the Commonwealth that's like that. It's just not. So they just have they've got a harder thing to fix. And they're so important to the rest of the Commonwealth that it's really important to get it fixed. I mean, it's important anywhere, but. So, it's a congested problem. And there's some people that really put a lot of stock in induced demand. And so you build a road, they're just going to get more traffic. There's a little bit of that, in an economic theory, in my view, but not a lot. So we need to work collaboratively, and it does bring, there's no question that it brings a level of economic development impact. It's positive. People want to be able to get on and go places easily. So if you're going to live somewhere where there's a stop or there's a way to get to where you want to go, I'd do that in a second, right? Why wouldn't you? But it's really hard to do that when you're already in an area that's congested to make that work. I mean, if you were starting from scratch and you didn't have any people and you were building a city or a metropolis, you'd do it very differently and it would work a lot better. But that's not where we are. And so to try to transform it as you're already mature in terms of infrastructure is really, really hard, and it's really, really expensive, and it's really disruptive. And I'm betting on technology in a lot of respects, Mr. Coleman. I've said this before. If you look at the technology that's impacting highways or impacting society, but particularly highways, if you really think 40 or 50 years from now, we'll be driving down the road the same way we're driving today. Ms. Maxwell just looked at a study that they want us to start talking about autonomous driving, and we need to. We need to figure it out. Because listen, it works. It's not perfect yet, but it works, and we're going to probably see some in Virginia, some pilot projects in Virginia. It works, and if you don't think it'll work in 50 years, you're wrong. It will work. And when you do that, if you can take the human element off the highway, if you could do that completely and have an algorithm, a linear program, or whatever it would be that would decide how to make it work, that's so much more efficient. It's incredible. No longer do you have the vagaries of individual decisions and distraction and on and on and on and on and on. That's all gone. It's like, listen, trains may not be the best way to get somewhere because of the congestion that they deal with. But if there's congestion, it doesn't matter who the passengers on the train are. It's going to go to where it goes, and it's going to take this much time to get there, period. Right? Cars, everybody making their own decision. Right? And some do it better than others, and the interplay makes it very inefficient and, in some cases, unsafe. You take all that out of it, it's dramatic what happens. Not to mention the other things that happen in life that change your need to go places and the way you go there. So I think technology will help us in the mid to long term, but in the short term, we're not there yet. And so we're going to have to fight and fight and fight to make these things work so that we can continue to have a great economy like we are experiencing in Virginia today. Tough problems, but they'll figure them out. All right, thank you very much. Next item, Mr. Commissioner, or excuse me, Ms. Director, is your report.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I will be brief because everyone can read my report at your leisure and all your free time. But to follow up on your comments about ridership and the importance of these systems, I think I consistently, since I started, every month have gotten to report that our Virginia agencies, transit agencies, have increased their ridership month over month, year over year for quite some time. And it has been WMATA and VRE that have lagged a little bit further behind. But I gave some good news earlier about VRE, and I will share that WMATA had its busiest day on March 28th since March of 2020, with 1 million people riding the trains that day. They also had a record ridership weekend this past weekend with the Cherry Blossom Festival, and I think their numbers, as well as VRE's, are really being impacted by people back in the office. So that's a good news story, and I'll keep reporting on ridership as we move forward. I will also thank Dr. Smoot for joining me at the grand opening ribbon cutting of the Blacksburg Multimodal Transit Facility a couple weeks ago. That's a really great project, 13,000 square feet on 6 acres on Virginia Tech's campus. It's going to be kind of a multimodal hub for all of the systems in the area to meet and passengers to wait and have bathrooms, and there's a hokey bike hub. Maybe most importantly, or very importantly, this will be a place for people to make connections in the future to the new train station in Christiansburg, which we're going to be having a grand opening for in next week. And then finally, I will just highlight, as we mentioned last month, we have kind of embarked upon a comprehensive review of our merit program. That's really important because there's always areas for improvement. And we are finding some of that now, and we have met since that time with the Transit Service Delivery Advisory Committee as required by code, and we'll be coming back to the Commonwealth Transportation Board Subcommittee and then to the full board when we have recommendations ready. Thank you.
Mr. Commissioner.
Mr. Secretary, members of the board, I've got a quick update for you. Contained within your package is my quarterly update documenting some of the work that we've done since January 1st of this year. I'm going to start backwards on the document and really work to the front page because that's fairly significant in my mind. Interstate 81, we continue to progress the work along the 81 corridor. In March, just last month, we began construction on the Weir's Cave truck climbing lanes in both the northbound and southbound directions. This is a fairly significant milestone, again, as we continue to progress the nearly $4 billion worth of work along the 81 corridor. Also exciting is the new bridge that's connecting the McAfee Knob Trailhead to the National Park Service of the Appalachian Trail. This was a project that the board took action on I want to say a year or so ago, to be able to advance funding on this, to be able to improve safety for those people that were traveling along the Appalachian Trail. Pedestrians needed to cross the road in a curve, and this has a high volume of pedestrian users across it. So certainly we've increased safety along the Appalachian Trail, as well as the motorists that are using Route 311. Inside the document, you can see that we had a very successful weekend in Northern Virginia. We named it the Big Beam Weekend, where we put beams across I-495. We shut down I-495 in the northbound direction for a full weekend to be able to help advance the flyover for the new express lanes that are under construction. I should point out that those express lanes on Project Next will be still shooting for service commencement in December of this year. So the governor will be, in my mind, one of the first governors to break ground on a project and cut a ribbon all during his tenure. So just for reference, those beams stand 11 feet tall and are about 11 or 3 feet wide. They weighed on average anywhere between 70 and 80 tons apiece. So these were very large pieces of steel that we erected. We were up there just recently, and they're starting to form the deck pans and starting to pour the concrete for this. So there's a fairly significant milestone on advancing project next. On the other side of the page, you see we recently celebrated the 100-year anniversary of the Jamestown, Scotland ferry, a very significant mode choice to be able to link Surrey County with James City County. The current ferry system carries almost 1 million vehicles a year on it. The original, so we had the opportunity to meet with the ancestors of the first captain of the ferry system. That ferry in 1925 carried 16 Model Ts across that ferry. Now we're up to our ferry system that's carrying 70 vehicles across it on a per-trip basis. So VDOT took it over in 1945, has been very successful. I see a continuation of that very important service across the James River. And I'm going to conclude on our National Work Zone Awareness Week. Every April, we celebrate Work Zone Awareness to be able to highlight the importance of safety in our work zones. This year's theme is Respect the Zone so we all can get home. Next Wednesday, we will be celebrating, as we do, up at the Work Zone Memorial up on Afton Mountain at 1 p.m. to be able to highlight the importance of Work Zone Awareness Week. Now, having said that, we do have a lot of cones and barrels out there. We have a very robust construction program that we have, more than 4,500 projects in our pipeline. You saw the budget, $18 billion just for highway alone, $25 billion total that we have. But yesterday alone, we had one of our contract employees killed in a work zone on Interstate 81. This only highlights the risks that our men and women of VDOT and our contracting agents or contractors perform each and every day to be able to provide the services of a world-class transportation system. Now, while this investigation is still ongoing, what we do know is that it was a shoulder operation ongoing. A tandem wheeled dump truck that was loaded with 12,000 pounds of stone backed over an employee. This is purely a preventable accident. So I sent out a reminder to the VDOT team this morning to remind ourselves that safety is our top priority. And I will stop a work zone immediately if there's a safety issue. If you see something, please say something. Now, I also say last night at 9 o'clock, I got a call about a work zone in the Hampton Roads area where it was not set up right. I'll just cut to the chase. I sent a note to the district engineer. The district engineer shut it down and is reevaluating that situation. But it took someone to call me, and I looked at it through the cameras and called or sent him a note, and he took immediate action. This is where safety is our top priority. I encourage each of you, if you see something along your travels, please call me. Don't hesitate. I would rather err on the side of caution. Our greatest assets are our employees, and I want to make sure that each of our employees go home at night safely to their families, as well as those people that travel our interstates. Our top priority is those individuals that are traveling through those work zones. So I encourage you to help us celebrate National Work Zone Awareness Week, but also highlight the work that the men and women of not only the agency do each and every day to be able to get people home and to their businesses each day, and for economic development and purposes. But the risks are out there and the risks are real. So I hate to
Thank you,
end on
Mr.
that note, but it's a somber note to remind all of us of the important work that we do each and every day.
Thank you, Commissioner. All these are preventable, folks. All these preventable. And, you know, the commissioner has, and our staff has some level of control. A work zone that's not set up properly is not set up properly. But somebody that drives down the highway and runs into a work zone, which is not the case here, but it happens, unfortunately, way too often. It's hard to understand what to do with that, right? I don't know how I just don't understand how that happens. I mean, I'm so much more heightened awareness when I see flashing lights in work zones. I'm paying like special super attention. And I presume everybody else is the same way, but obviously they're not. So we just got to continue to push on this. And whether it's an accident with one of our contractors that had nothing to do with the traveling public per se, or whether it's somebody crashing into a work zone, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. In this case, somebody's lost their life. So I'd ask you to join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. We just got to do better. So, in terms of my remarks, the only thing I want to tell you, and I have to apologize for this, I've got to be out of town with the governor, out of the country, the week of the CTB meeting, the June meeting, and I do not want to have the meeting without me being here. So we're going to move it a week late. Basically, just move it a week late. We're going to send that out today. And I apologize if that messes anybody up or they can't be here, but I get to make those decisions, and I want to be here in June. It's an important month, June 24th. My wife will be really happy that's her birthday. I'll be racing home. Not racing, just racing. But anyway, that's going to be the new date. So with that, I am going to adjourn the workshop meeting, and I'm going to call the action meeting into order. And the first item on the agenda is public comment. See anybody that signed up for public comment? So I'm going to move to the approval of the minutes. They were distributed. Ms. Sellers makes a motion. Is there a second? Ms. Dunlop seconds. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? Thank you very much. Item number one, Mr. Robbie Prezioso. We'll try to move through these swiftly. Mr. Prezioso, commemorative naming of the request of Wise County, northbound and southbound bridges on Route 23, US 58, over Route 613, as the Bruce K. Robinette Memorial Bridge located within the Bristol District. Mr. Prezioso.
Yes, sir. So this is a bridge naming that was requested by the Wise County Board of Supervisors. It carries both Route 23 and 58, and it crosses three things. It crosses Route 613 East Stone Gap Road. It crosses the South Fork of the Powell River, and it crosses the railroad down there. So this would be the Bruce K. Robinette Memorial Bridge. He was born in February of 1938, and he dedicated 42 years of his life to public service, starting first with secondary education, and then later as the director of the Lenawesco Planning District Commission. He's a prime example of commitment and dedication to his community, to his region. I think his fingerprint shows how one individual can really strengthen the infrastructure of the roads, the public water, the sewer, and the internet access for that region. Sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Folks.
Mr. Secretary, I had the privilege of knowing Bruce Robinette for many, many years, and my wife was a student at Waynesboro High School in the 60s when he was assistant principal, so they go back a long, long way. And as Robbie said, he made an incredible difference in Southwest Virginia. He was the first executive director of Lenawisco, which is a Lee Wise Scott City of Norton Planning District, and I did some legal work for him. And more recently, he and I were in the same Sunday school class in Bristol, and he is an incredibly talented, caring person, and it's an honor for me to move approval of the motion from the Wise County Board of Supervisors.
Thank you, Mr. Folks. There's a second by Ms. Dunlop. Please join Mr. Folks and Ms. Dunlop and I if you approve of this by standing in memory of Mr. Robinette. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Ms. Kim Pryor. Number 2, action on revised 25 through 36-year improvement program transfers from February 14 to March 19th. Ms. Pryor.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, members of the board. You have in your packet the monthly transfers, both those that require your approval and those that are for your information. I will point out that the list is a bit lengthy this month because it reflects the transfers associated with the pipeline studies you approved last month, and I recommend your approval.
The motion, Mr. Casperts moves. Is there a second? Ms. Green seconds. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? Thank you very much. Item number 3, Ms. Pryor, action on additional projects, 6-year improvement program for fiscal years 25 through 30.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, members of the board. I'm bringing to you a proposed amendment of 3 projects to the 6-year improvement program. 2 are ITTF-funded projects. The third is an additional pipeline study in the Northern Virginia region. One of the pipeline studies approved last month was actually also funded and is being conducted by Fairfax County. And so there's an additional pipeline project being added, and that is reflected on the amendment list, and I recommend your approval.
Mr. Casperts moves. Is there a second? Mr. Coleman seconds. All in favor say, is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Any abstentions? Thank you very much. Item number 4, Mr. Heltzel. Action on limited access control changes for construction of a new park and ride lot at I-64-250 in Albemarle County located in the Culpeper District.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This project originated as a smart scale application at the behest of Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission and Albemarle County. We have conducted public involvement and gone through our environmental due diligence. The chief engineer has also concurred in staff's findings on it, and the FHWA has approved these limited access changes. With favorable dispensation, we will move on and advertise the project later on this year. And, Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval.
Madam Byers. Is there a second? Mr. There's a motion and there's a second now. We're going to fight over it. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? Mr. Laird had the second. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Snyder, action on locality land conveyance in North Quincy Street, the County of Arlington, located within the Northern Virginia District.
Good afternoon. Yes, this request we received from the Arlington County Board of Supervisors to convey the right-of-way and easements for North Quincy Street. They currently maintain these streets, and VDOT has reviewed it, and we recommend your approval.
Casperts. So moved. Is there a second? Okay. Ms. Dunlop seconds. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? Thank you. Ms. Snyder, number 6, action locality land conveyances, various streets, the city of Hampton, located within Hampton Roads District.
Yes, sir. Same action, locality conveyance for the right-of-way and easements from the Route 172 project. The city currently maintains these roads. VDOT has reviewed, and we recommend your approval.
Mr. Stant. Mr. Coleman. Thank you. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? Thank you, Ms. Snyder.
Thank you.
Ms. Farmer, action on the revised fiscal year 2025 annual budget.
Yes, sir. Mr. Secretary, members of the board, the resolution before you and the attached revised budget approves the 2025 revisions and also sets the expectation that the department will continue to monitor reimbursements and update the board on a semi-annual basis on the expected federal reimbursements coming.
Comments or questions? Motion to approve. Mr. Coleman moves. Is there a second? Captain Byers seconds. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? Thank you, Ms. Farmer. Item number 8, Mr. Ramachandra. Is he here? He is. The tender's here. Action, item number 8, action on V-Trans vision goals, objectives, and guiding principles and the V-Trans performance measures.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Secretary, members of the board. The first item that is in front of you is adoption or request for action on V-Trans vision goals and objectives, first action. And as part of that same resolution, the second item is adoption of performance measures. The board has been deliberating vision goals and objectives for the past 2 years, 2+ years at this point, and there was a presentation last month on the performance measures. The request is to take an action so that the staff can move forward with the other steps in the V-Trans process and recommends approval.
Is there a motion to approve? Ms. Green moves. Is there a second? Mr. Folks seconds. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? Thank you very much. Item number 9. Same, you already briefed that, is that right?
The second
Go ahead.
item, Mr. Secretary, is a request to align the weighting system that is used in the V-Trans prioritization with the previous board action taken for related to smart scale. As part of the resolution, the staff is also recommending that this particular move be made administratively in the future so that there is it can be done in a timely manner.
So to be clear, as we discussed in the last meeting, it would be incongruent to have one without the other, to have them in conflict. And so when we do them in the future, we want to do them simultaneously because it's the same thing. You either do it in both places or you do it in neither place, but it doesn't make sense to have it in one and not the other. And so the motion would be to do it, one, to approve these, and then in the future to do them congruently at the same time. Is there a motion to approve? Laird moves. Is there a second? Captain Byers seconds. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? All right. I do not believe there's any new business to come before the board. Mr. Lawson.
I wanted to raise one thing possibly for this body. I read a report that the Federal Department of Transportation is asking the states to look through, I presume it's federal regulations and directives to the states to report back on anything they deem to be unconstitutional or regulations that are based on unlawful delegation of legislative power and so on. And I'm curious, what are we doing to respond to that? And then secondly, is that something by way of new business that this nonpartisan board would want to participate in or could be helpful in participating in that?
Commissioner, you prepared to address that now?
Mr. Secretary, I'm not aware of this, but I see Angel standing up that may be able to shed some light on the ask. And if it was published in a Federal Register, we're already working on this, but go ahead, Angel.
We are, yes. So it's a very broad request if you've read the Federal Register notice. So our process for that is to send it out to the various directorates to solicit input. In this case, we're working through the chiefs who oversee the various business lines within the agency to determine if there are objectives that we want to put forward in response to the request for information. It also has a very tight turn as well. It's an early May, I believe, deadline.
We'll keep you briefed.
Thank you. I have to add, what made me focus on this is I participated in what I thought was a VDOT study identifying areas of congestion. It was just done by us, and I learned that we have a civil rights division, and the way I backed into that was the study, which had an exercise of putting icons along a map of members of the public where you see congestion, but it has us reporting our race and our sex and whether we're non-binary and things of that sort. And my immediate thought was, what on
What
earth?
difference does it make?
Yeah, I mean, a traffic jam is a traffic jam, and I mean, frankly, I would hope and expect that we have a very good idea of where our backups are and how long they are and so on. I
I
guess.
don't really care who's in them.
Yeah. And so I don't know what the genesis of the Civil Rights Division is, but I would think at a minimum, putting it into this exercise of determining congestion, it's at a minimum a distraction. But I would agree with you, however many folks of various types and qualities and races really doesn't matter. What matters is it's a 7-mile backup, right? So.
The rest of it's not relevant. Thank you, Mr.
Yes.
Lawson. I will say that the regulation piece of this is something that we've been working on in Virginia for 3 years now. We will find that the governor gave us a goal to meet of at least 25% reduction in regulations across the board. The Transportation Secretariat will meet that goal, and it's been led by VDOT, who will more than meet their goal, and it will be for the benefit of everybody. These regulations are not helping anybody, and that's why we're getting rid of them. They're unnecessary to our mission. So I want to salute our folks who've been working really hard to reduce that and just make things more efficient and straightforward. So a lot of work to do, Mr. Lawson. This is a big beast.
I appreciate it.
And there's lots of work to do, but we're working on it. Thank you. Ms. Dunlop.
Yes, Mr. Secretary, to that end, I do hope that the chiefs actually disseminate this request down to all the troops, because some of the most egregious problems one faces sometimes doesn't rise to the top. And we need to enlist all of our great employees in coming up with these things that need to be fixed.
Commissioner's listening to you. I think that's our standard. We're looking for input. All right, thank you all very much. Have a safe trip home. This meeting's adjourned.